Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 53, Hebus versus Namajunas, also known as UFC Vegas 89. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me back once again is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, brother. How you doing, man?
Doing really well. I am sad that we weren't able to link it up while you were here in the Lone Star State. Just this past week wasn't the week for it, but it looks like you had a great time.
Yeah.
You're still every bit as tan as Corey McKenna. So like that Texas left you untouched in that regard. But
yeah,
how was
that's
it?
the best weather. So first of all, shout out to Dev for filling in. I gave him maybe one of the worst cards in UFC history to have to jump in for. But
I just assume you circle Marcin Tybura fights on your calendar. He's like, all right,
let's go to Texas. Yeah, but shout out to Dev. Very nice for him to step up. I had this like epiphany as I was traveling or the week I was in Texas. So we weren't close. We were at least 3 hours plus away from each other, but I just had this epiphany, like, I should be the one living in Texas. I just love Texas. I love everything about Texas. The people are the nicest people on earth. The food is absolutely incredible. We went to this. You ever heard of Grapevine?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So you're familiar. Okay, I don't know like how popular it is, but there's this little town called Grapevine. It's like we were in like the touristy spot. Man, I had this chili there that was unbelievable. The best chili I've ever had in my life. That I went to the Fort Worth. Listen, let me tell you something. The prettiest woman in the world is from New Brunswick, Canada, Heartland, New Brunswick, Canada. Now lives in Coventry, Rhode Island. But dude, if you're a single dude, this is the second time going to Fort Worth. If you're a single dude and you got nothing going on, dude, move to freaking Fort Worth. It is unbelievable.
If you're watching this and you're a UFC fan and you think Andrea Lee is hot, move to Dallas-Fort Worth.
It's a whole arena.
You will find you one.
Yeah. There's an entire arena of Andrea Lee's.
And honestly, like you drive, to a couple neighborhoods away, you could have a whole arena full of Tracy Cortezes.
Yeah. My wife was blown away by the fact that we were at the rodeo. And I don't know, it's not huge, but it's probably, I don't know, 5,000 people. I don't know. And they have a group prayer like in the arena to start it off. And there was this big presentation about America. And I'm like, my wife was blown away. And I was like, man, I love Fort Worth. I wouldn't say I'm calling you sir and call my wife ma'am and all this. And listen, Ben, you think I was wearing a cowboy hat? Dude, I went all out. I had the cowboy hat, I had the shirt, the jeans, I had the big ass belt buckle. I was wearing cowboy boots. I was all in. I don't know. I've rode a horse like once in my life, but I'll fake it, man.
Dude, no, seriously, you would thrive in Texas. Period. You were built for Fort Worth.
I love it.
Or if you didn't want the big city thing, you could move to like College Station where Texas A&M is, and that's like it's a bastion of conservative thought, even by Texas standards.
I ate. We ate this restaurant. It's actually the second time I ate it. It's like it was an old saloon, but it was attached to this famous old hotel. It was actually Bonnie and Clyde stayed there, and I snuck up and took a picture and stuff. Like, yeah, I love the history. I love everything about Texas, man. I freaking love it.
Texas is great, man.
And that's where Bo Nickel's from.
It is where Bo Nickel's from.
So, full circle.
Yep. That is how badly we want to talk about UFC on ESPN 53. I'll kind of give you the same spiel that I did to Dev a week ago. Obviously, and we say this every week, the standards for especially an on ESPN card where it's just on basic cable, they have to be different than for something the UFC is asking you for 70 or $80 for. But I think it's fair to look at a card and expect some divisional relevance, to ask, okay, who on this card is closest to a title shot with a win? And last week I said nobody on that card is even 3 wins away from a title shot. Even Tybura and Tuivasa in the wide open heavyweight division, neither of those guys is 3 wins from a title shot, and nobody else is closer. Looking at this one, I mean, it's got to be the main event.
Yeah, main event winner.
And it being at flyweight,
you're still behind. I mean, if obviously, well, everything's pushed back, being that Grosso and Shevchenko are coaching the Ultimate Fighter season, so that's delaying any
everything
shot
by
that.
close to a year, probably.
You figure Manon Ferro, Aaron Blanchfield winner is going to be next. Macy Barber's right there, especially considering Barber has a win over Hibas. Ferro has a win over Namunis. So at best, just sitting at, fourth in line. Yeah, not a lot in title contention and rankings. Not a lot of changes in the rankings will happen.
No, shouldn't be too much of a discussion in the UFC, or sorry, the Sherdog rankings channel after this one. In terms of up and coming prospects, anyone in particular you're excited to see on this one?
Yeah, so like the overall card, I think is pretty good for what it's kind of like, great on a scale. What could you possibly make between UFC 299 and 300? Because I mean, those both cards are so, and even 298, but
they're like black holes sucking up everything from the weeks around them. Yeah. So
it's so tough. Like people are bitching about the UFC 301 main event night. I mean, I get it, but this is what you're going to get when you load up a card like they did, especially 300, because 300, they went quantity over quality. And I know, obviously, like, I'm not saying that's not quality. The card is weird, but I mean like name value. They didn't go huge names. Mm-hmm. There's no Connors, there's no, surprise returns, Habib, anything like that. But they just stacked up. They put who's all the best guys that can fight, and let's all put them on the same card. That said, like the main event's really good. I like both fighters a lot. The rest of the card doesn't have name value, but what I do like, there's a lot of action fights. So to answer your question, who's the prospect? I think it's Talbott. I mean, he's a guy that's got a lot of buzz, undefeated. Yeah, he's undefeated, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's undefeated. I'm one of the most insane paces I've ever seen. But there's a lot of really fun action people, like Quarantillo is on this card. Julian Erosa is on this card. I mean, even like your heavyweight, you have like Justin Tafa. Like, say what you want about Tafa, he ain't boring. He's going to swing for the fences and try to knock your head off. So overall, from what they could give you, like I give this card like a C+. Like, I think I'm okay with it. It looks like UFC 300 compared to last week's card.
Yeah, I'm thinking C, like straight C. And you kind of alluded to this. It's the kind of card that could deliver a lot more in the cage than it promises on paper. So
yeah, exactly.
And having said that, and we'll get to them as we go through the fights, this card has a few people that I may have written off prematurely, and I had to be reminded of just how well they've done over the last year or two. So we'll get to those in order as we get to them. Any other general thoughts before we jump into these prelims?
No, let's do it. Oh, one thing I will say, my one negative. Dude, people in Texas write fast. We city people, we get accused of it, but then you guys in Texas, they get on that big ass highway. They can step on it.
They definitely can.
They're like Payton Talbott out there. They're going.
Yeah, I mean, I've been honked at for going 85 in the left lane before.
And they'll have those big ass trucks too, so it's a little intimidating when they get right on your ass.
Yeah, my Kia Optima, they're gonna roll right over me like Bigfoot, First up on the UFC Vegas 89 prelims is a heavyweight contest between Mohammed Usman and Mick Parkin. Usman, the 34-year-old Nigerian American, is 10-2 overall. He is 3-0 since joining the UFC as the winner of season 30 of The Ultimate Fighter. He fought twice last year, taking a unanimous decision over Junior Tafa in April and another unanimous decision over Jake Collier in September at UFC Fight Night Fizzy versus Gamrot. He'll look to make it 4 in a row in the UFC, 4-0 against Parkin. Parkin, 28-year-old Englishman, is a perfect 8-0 as a professional mixed martial artist. He is 2-0 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He also fought twice last year, also won twice by decision. He beat Jamal Pogues in July in London, then came back in November at UFC Fight Night, Allen versus Craig, and beat Caio Machado. I'm going to quiz you on a lot of these odds because most of the lines are fairly close. Your favorite here is minus 150. Your underdog plus 120. Who are they, Keith?
Whew, that's really tough. I'm going to say Parkin because the undefeated. And Usman, I mean, you think about a guy who's undefeated in the UFC, brother's a former champion, Ultimate Fighter winner. If you go back to counting the Ultimate Fight wins, he's like 5-0 in the UFC, 6-0 in the UFC, something like that. Dude gets disrespected. Like, people hate on this guy, myself included. Like, I haven't been that very complimentary for a guy who's, done so pretty well so far. But I'm still going to go with that O for Parkin is going to make him the favorite.
You are correct. Mick Parkin minus 150, Mohammed Usman plus 120. You've already kind of laid out what I was going to say, and I alluded to this during the intro. Usman is someone that I may have prematurely written off, and I think a lot of fans may have, because his first exposure to most fans, like anyone who follows MMA outside of the UFC, was a couple of years ago when he fought Brandon Sales in PFL, and there was a lot of to-do about him. He was Kamaru Usman's big, if not older, brother, and he just looked terrible. Like, he got outgassed really badly by a guy who admitted he was a part-time fighter in Brandon Sales and like barely trained. It was humiliating, and it took literally years and almost a half dozen fights, I think, for a lot of people to kind of get that taste out of their mouths. I know two things now. I know that Mohammed Usman is not the worst fighter in the world, and I know that Mick Parkin is not the next Tom Aspinall. Whether those those overturned expectations meet in the middle somewhere is what we're going to find out on Saturday. But I understand the whatever amount of hype there is around Parkin. He's British. He's undefeated. He's heavyweight. At heavyweight, anyone is fairly close to contention. But from what I've seen so far, I mean, he's a pretty good boxer with decent power, but he's going to outweigh Usman by 25 pounds, and I believe that Usman's probably the harder hitter. I would see upset all over this if I were more confident in Usman's gas tank. And that I'm still not. Like, Usman is definitely better than I thought he was, and he is continuing to improve. He's a better fighter than the guy who lost to Brandon Sales three and a half years ago. But it's still pretty ridiculous that his nickname is the Motor, considering that he doesn't have good cardio. And outlasting the Junior Taffas and Jake Colliers of the world, I feel like Parkin is someone who's going to be able to box at a steady pace and stay upright against Usman, which means Usman's best chance at beating him is clipping him with a huge kill shot like he did to Zach Pauga. That is certainly possible. It's heavyweight, but I don't think of that as the main chance. So I'm kind of with the odds makers here. I'm leaning Parkin. I'm leaning Parkin by decision. And again, Parkin's not a perfect fighter. He's young. He's young in his career. He may well continue to improve, but it's the gas tank thing. Because normally, as the fight goes on, I would think it's more dangerous for Parkin because he has to continue to be close to perfect. It only takes one slip up. But the way Usman's wrestling disappears and his striking volume kind of dries up as the fight goes along makes him actually less dangerous as it goes. So give me Parkin to win by decision in a fight that's not as exciting as the UFC hopes.
Yeah. I don't know if you said this. I think you said that Mohammed is older than Kamaru. Kamaru's actually the older brother.
No. I said he's the big, but not the older.
Oh,
He's
I'm
the
sorry.
big brother.
I
But
thought you
yeah.
said he was bigger and older. Okay, yeah. Okay.
No.
Sorry. I just want that, the comment in the, they watch a 3-hour breakdown and Ben speaks one little detail. That's all everyone likes to jump on.
I turned it off after 7 minutes because you don't even know what Usman. There's always one, man.
I know. We a bunch of casuals. Yeah. Casuals who doing a 3-hour breakdown.
Dude, I watched PFL. I admitted to watching PFL. I'm not a casual.
Yeah. So I'll say this about Usman. He looked much better in his last fight. And I agree with what you said. He looks like he is improving. He's still very low volume, which I don't like. He's a counter striker, a lot of single shots, a lot of wild looping shots. He kind of loads up on every strike, constantly looking to land the perfect shot. I've said this before. He kind of ducks his head and just throws. But you mentioned he has serious power. The problem is defensively. He's hittable because he doesn't move his head. I like that he added calf kicks against Jay Collier, this new wrinkle to his game, which I liked. But he's also open to leg kicks. I mean, I go back to the Eduardo Perez fight. Perez had a lot of success by kicking him in the legs. Usman can wrestle. He'll close the distance, grind and clinch, and kind of get a takedown there. He likes to grab a leg and kind of launch his opponents or just like run the pipe for a single. Doesn't really set up his entries. They're a little reaching. When he's on top, he's not the most exciting. He'll lay and pray. I mean, he did the entire fight against Junior Tafa. He has been hurt. I go back to like the Mitchell Stipe fight where he was hurt on the Contender Series. But the biggest improvement, and this is the question mark you had, and I mean, his cardio was so bad. His cardio was much better against Jay Collier. I mean, he didn't completely – now, he slowed down, of course, but he didn't completely gas, and that was the area that I thought Collier could have some success. Parkin's not a great athlete, but what he is for a heavyweight is surprising is how much he throws. He has a lot of volume. He's constantly moving forward and attacking. He throws tight, straight shots down the pipe. He has some pop. Overall, for heavyweight, though, I would say it's still lower power. Like, I agree with you that even though Usman will be smaller, he's definitely the one that I'd least want to get hit by. One issue I have with Parkin, is that he turtles up a lot, which I hate. He was hurt on the Contender Series due to his poor defense. For a British guy, the dude can wrestle. I shouldn't say he's not good at wrestling, but he goes to it a lot, and you don't have to be good at heavyweight because generally speaking, most guys are strikers. There's not many heavyweight wrestlers. He will shoot for takedowns without much setup. If he gets on top, he has good top control. If taken down, he uses his big frame to get back to his feet. I'm really torn. I think both guys may be improving, but I still view them as lower level talents in the UFC. I think this one could be a pick'em. I think it could be a coin toss. I think the line should be closer. I still am trusting Parkin's volume and cardio more. So I'll say Parkin wins a close decision. You know what? Let's call it a split decision. Give me Parkin by split decision.
We head now to the flyweight division for a clash between two Dana White's Contender Series alums from last season. It is Igor da Silva versus Andre Lima. Da Silva, the 20-year-old Brazilian, is a perfect 8-0 as a pro. This will be his debut. He fought on the Contender Series last September, where he knocked out Jonatas Silva in the second round. He came to the Contender Series as the outgoing Jungle Fight flyweight champ. He'll look to keep things undefeated against the also undefeated Lima. 25-year-old Brazilian is 7-0. He fought on the Contender Series just a couple weeks after Da Silva, taking a unanimous decision over Hickson Tai, and kind of a weird fight. Probably get to that. Odds here favor Lima. He is minus 180. Da Silva plus 145. I'm not sure I get it because neither guy has fought the best competition coming up. Both fairly middling competition. I actually think Igor da Silva, who they may call Igor Severino, I'm not sure what they'll call him on the broadcast, but in Jungle Fight, I think he was fighting a little higher level of competition, but Da Silva looked good on the Contender Series. If either of these guys is a top 15 guy 3 years from now, like let's be generous and say 3 years from now, considering the division it is, I think it's Da Silva. I mean, he's only 20 years old. You got to love that. Of the two of them, he's the one that's got a little bit more body to grow into. He's taller, rangier, where Lima is like this little chunk of muscle. He's built like John Dodson or John Lineker, where he's just like this little tank of a guy. Having said that, if Lima's going to beat De Silva, now is the time to do it. He's a little more of a finished product in that he's probably right now what he's going to be. He's a burly little flyweight who hits very hard for flyweight and leverages that by swinging hard. Like, he gives himself every chance to knock the other guy out. And for what it's worth, he seems able to keep that kind of pace up. He just didn't get to show us much on the Contender Series because despite fighting a guy named Hickson Tai, he wasn't very Hickson and he wasn't very Tai. I mean, he mostly ran and scooted around the edges of the cage while Lima chased him around. And for what it's worth, yeah, Lima won all 3 rounds, but like it could have been worse if he were better at cutting the cage off. Yeah, I see Lima's best chance of winning here as clocking De Silva with a big shot and either putting him down or doing enough damage that he, obviously wins that round and changes the whole complexion of the fight. But I think De Silva has the more diverse skill set. From what I've seen of the two of them, he's more comfortable on the ground. I don't think he's he's no slouch in the striking department either. I think he's a better athlete. I think he's naturally bigger, even if Lima's more muscular and he's older. I'm not saying Igor De Silva is a future top 15 guy, but of the two, he's the one that appears to have that kind of upside. And unless this really is too much too soon for him, I think he cruises to a pretty easy decision. And I guess that's a pretty big upset, or at least a moderate upset.
Yeah. This is a really fun fight. I like this fight. I like both guys. Mm-hmm. De Silva or Severino, or whatever they want to call him. Just you mentioned this 20 years old. Like, you gotta love that. I mean, he's a very aggressive striker. He stalks his foe, tight boxing. What I liked about it seeing is his ability to wrap punches around his opponent's defense. Seeing that he will lunge into shots when he's out of range, though. More of a pocket boxer. Defensively, high guard defense. He pillars to avoid strikes, which is concerning, but at his age, he can fix that. He's got some power. I mean, he's got 4 TKOs already in his career, and he's not even close to his power years. He's probably 6-7 years away from that, maybe longer. He will look to wrestle, but his entries are kind of ugly. There's no setups, but if he gets to fight to the ground, he's a threat. I mean, he already has 4 subs on his record. Lima is also, I mean, he's like the veteran, but he's 25, so he's pretty young himself. He's a kickboxer. What I like about him on the feet, very relaxed and comfortable, not stressing at all, just seems to flow in his striking. Also aggressive. It's weird that he struggled to cut off the cage on the Contender Series, because if you look, and again, different, lower level competition, but he did really well at cutting the cage off on the regional scene. His striking is accurate. I love his overhand right. He draws power because he sits on his punches. A lot of kicks. He's one of the few fighters I've seen that checks leg kicks, which is nice to see. I haven't seen too much of his offensive wrestling to really kind of grade him on that, but his defensive wrestling is strong from what I've seen. Top game, good ground and pound. He's a BJJ brown belt. Take that for what it's worth. He has no submissions on his record, so I wouldn't call him a threat there. I definitely think that Severino should have the advantage there. I like both guys. I think this is a really solid matchup between 2 promising prospects. I think this is in one later down the road, we'd be like, wow, these guys fought each other already back in the day. It's hard to know what you're going to get in one's UFC debut. It's even tougher when you add in their ages, because they could both improve. Specifically Severino, big leaps and bounds. I'm going to go the opposite, though. I'm going to go with Lima. I think he's the cleaner, more technical striker. I think he has the more complete kicking game. I think he pieces up Severino before getting a late TKO. I'll say 3rd round. Give me Lima by 3rd round TKO.
Next up, women's bantamweights take the cage as Montserrat Rendon tries to stay undefeated against Dariya Zheleznyakova. Rendon The 35-year-old Mexican is 6-0 as a professional. She is 1-0 in the UFC. She fought just once last year, taking a split decision over Tamarez Vidal. That was at Fight Night Fiziev versus Gamrot. She'll look to make it 2 in a row at the expense of the debuting Zheleznyakova. 28-year-old Russian is 8-1 overall. She fought most recently, almost exactly a year ago, in Aries FC, which is, I mean, most of their events are in Paris. That one was in Paris. She drew the UFC's attention. Here she is, and she is already an almost 2-1 favorite as she steps in for her debut at -190. Rendon coming back at +150. Man, you know that women's bantamweight is not great. And obviously, everything I'm about to say about women's bantamweight went double for women's featherweight for as long as it lasted.
I like when you say women's bantamweight is not great. When you think who the champion is Raquel Pennington. I'm like, yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, because when I prepared my notes on Montserrat Rendon, I kept on finding myself saying things about her that sounded exactly like things I would say about a male heavyweight. That's how you know it's not good. I'm like, well, she's 35, but that's not great, but she's still got a little time to work. And, she at least definitely has a bantamweight body. She's like a sizable woman with some muscle on her frame. I'm like, I feel like I'm describing a 6-0 heavyweight that's like not really good at anything, but he's 6'4" and 250 pounds.
Parkin.
Yeah. No, Big Parkin's got way more upside. I feel like I'm talking about I don't know, Waldo Cortez Acosta or something.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, Rendon, she's 35 years old and she's 6-0, and she's okay at everything. She's not a great athlete. I mean, she is big and strong, but she's not terribly athletic. And I feel like I'm talking about Raquel Pennington now. If either of these women, is a future contender, it is obviously Zheleznyakova, who has shown flashes of brilliance. Good athlete, big. I mean, Rendona's good size. Zheleznyakova is big, has long reach, uses it well in her kickboxing. I think this is kind of a setup fight where the UFC, fingers crossed, that this tall, good-looking blonde Russian just comes in and lamps Rendon, and they have I don't know, they have Valentina Shevchenko light on their hands. For what it's worth, I think that's what we're going to get. Rendon is going to test her luck on the feet. I don't think she's going to like what she gets, but I don't think she's going to be able to do much about it. Give me Zheleznyakova by a first round, highlight reel knockout. I think she's going to be able to touch her with kicks. I think she's going to be able to catch her with punches. Rendon is pretty porous on the feet, and she's not shown much aptitude for taking down resisting opponents. So I think she's just going to kind of be there for the Zheleznyakova heavy bag routine. I think this one is going to be over pretty quick.
Yeah, dude. First of all, can we give my boy Ben some credit to be able to perfectly pronunciate Zheleznyakova? I can't even do it after you said it 15 times. Zheleznyakova. I mean, dude, you are as professional as they come, dude. That was fantastic.
And the minute she steps into the cage, she is the UFC's all-time leader in how much her name is worth in Scrabble. I mean, she got about 5 Z's in there. Yeah.
That guy? Oh God, I can't think of his name. He looks like the ultimate fighter guy. He's got bald head and tattoos. He had a weird Polish last name with all these. Krzysztof Zaczynski, remember him?
Krzysztof Zaczynski, sure.
Yeah, he I don't know. He might be up there too. He had a couple good ones. But yeah,
it's so good that he went on to become kind of a stunt man and action movie supporting character. You would see him crop up in Marvel movies in the 2010s. And good for him, man.
I hope he makes it as big as Oleg Taktarov, the Russian bear. Rendon, I mean, the thing that just stands out to me is just how physically strong she. I mean, the girl's ripped. I mean, she's she should be she's the one you'd be hitting curls at Planet Fitness, and she comes up next to you, just instantly put your weights down because you get out of that whole section before anybody sees that she's putting up way more weights than you are.
And you're real careful to like wipe down your station with the towel so she doesn't call you out.
Yeah. If you're doing a set and she's waiting for you to be done, you make sure you clean that thing. She on the feet, she's pretty raw. You know, she works behind the jab. She throws straight punches on the pipe. Has some power, but nothing spectacular. I go to the Vidal fight. Vidal had a lot of success kicking Rendon's legs because she has such a like boxing style. She will close the distance and try to get the fight to the ground. But the problem is she isn't a wrestler. She's one of the ones she's got to like catch a kick, try to get the fight to the ground when their opponent makes mistakes to get on top. She is a good grappler. I'll say that. I should say she has good control, but her finishes, like she doesn't have a finish on her records, which is concerning. Zheleznyakova, I apologize how often I know I'm going to butcher that a lot. She has one loss in her career. That one loss, I thought it was an early stoppage, a fight that she was winning, and she got taken down, and there was like a little bit of ground and pound flurry, and I thought the referee stopped her way too early.
It was with 1 second left in the first round too, so
and she wasn't even eating that big. I mean, she ate some shots, but it wasn't like
it's what Aspen Lab would call a girl stoppage.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, she is really big for like she's like the freaking Buc-ee's of the division. Like she's huge. There's another Texas reference for you guys. I love Buc-ee's, by the way. My son came home. So let me tell you my side step. So my uncle is and his wife, my Aunt Stacy. They're just the greatest people. My Aunt Stacy is a very successful woman. She's she used to work at the Parkin hospital, which if you're familiar with history, that's actually the one that JFK died in. Okay. And she was a big wig there, and she's done some bigger things since she's left. That said, she's like the most generous person I know. Like the amount of money she spent on my kids this week was ridiculous. But she bought my son a Buc-ee's. She bought my son a gazillion things, but she bought him a Buc-ee's stuffed animal that's like almost as big as him. It's like freaking huge. We had to take it back on the plane.
Have to buy it a seat.
My son's carry-on was too big for him, so there's me walking through three different airports carrying this gigantic Buc-ee's. And honestly, by the way, with a cowboy hat, not a care in the world. I couldn't care less. I was so proud walking around this gigantic Buc-ee's because if you know, you know.
Yeah.
Back to on the feet, very aggressive. She got fast hand, tight boxing, throws straight shots down the pipe. Love her overhand right. She's got good power. She has 5 TKOs already in her young career. I love that she works the body. I haven't seen much of her offensive wrestling. Her takedown defense is weak. I mean, we take defense. She struggles to get back up to feet. I mean, I did say it was an early stoppage. She also got taken down and was mounted pretty quickly. So that is concerning. And she obviously has no subs on her record, which is concerning. Rendon is the more well-rounded fighter, for sure. She has a path to victory. She can get the fight to the ground. That said, I'm really impressed with Zheleznyakova striking. I think Zheleznyakova pieces her up, and I think she lands some power shots. I think she catches her. I'm going to say Zheleznyakova knocks her out in the very first round. Give me Zheleznyakova. I'm not saying out cold, but I think she hurts her, drops her on the feet, and then finishes her off with follow-up shots. Zheleznyakova by first round TKO.
Featherweights are up next as Jarno Errens and Stephen Nguyen both look for their first UFC victory. Errens, the 29-year-old Dutchman, is 13-5-1 overall. He's 0-2 since joining the UFC about a year and a half ago. He debuted at UFC Paris of 2022, dropping a majority decision to William Gomez. Came back last August at UFC Fight Night Holloway versus Korean Zombie and dropped a unanimous decision to Sung Woo Choi. So after losing to a Frenchman on a French card and losing to a Korean on a Korean card, he now steps in finally against Nguyen, an American, on an American card. 30-year-old Texan is 9-1 overall. He finally makes his way to the UFC after 3 tries on the Contender Series. He fought on season 3, losing to Alon Cruz, fought on season 5, where he won but was not signed. Finally, third time was the charm. He fought last September, knocking out AJ Cunningham in the second round. That was good enough for Dana White. And now he steps in, and he actually steps in as a moderate favorite. Nguyen is minus 185, Errens plus 145. Keith, I'm going to flip this one to you first, but I'll seed the conversation with this. Errens is turning into one of those guys where he keeps losing, and I keep on saying he looks pretty good. He's better than his record. And I followed Zhaleznyakova Zhumagulov down that road till he was like 1-5 in the UFC. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me Errens just isn't all that good, or tell me he actually is, and here's where he turns it around. How do you see this one going?
Zhumagulov still has less losses in the UFC than he has wives, but
that's the formula to happiness right there, man.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, that's how I live.
Hey, yeah, you know, if you went to Fort Worth, you'd be doing it right. You know, Jarno Errens, you know, he's okay. I'm not as high on him as you are, but he's a good striker. Very aggressive Muay Thai style. He likes to stand directly in front of his opponents. That's what I mean by his Muay Thai style. Doesn't really avoid shots. Doesn't set up attacks at all. He kind of just throws as he's marching forward. Problem is he keeps his head on the center line, so he's very easy to hit. I love that he works the body. I love that, you know, straight kick to the body. He does waste a bunch of energy throwing spinning wheel kicks and flying karate kicks and stuff like that, which the effectiveness isn't worth the energy you use. He throws hard though. I mean, he's got I'd say decent power, probably plus power. He struggles to check leg kicks. He's open to that. He does have a judo background. If he closes distance, he can get a takedown there, but weak takedown defense. If he's taken down, he struggles to get back up to his feet. He does have 5 submission wins. He almost got a sub against William Gomez to end their fight. Stephen Nguyen, long and lengthy fighter, fast hands, marches down his opponents with pressure, works behind a really crisp jab. He likes to slip and rip the counters coming back at him. Got some pop. Despite being a long fighter, he's one of these guys, he won't use that. He'll actually willing to throw down in the pocket. He also loves stupid spinning attacks. I could see Errens throwing a spinning attack and then Nguyen just responds with one of his own, trying to get it back. He avoids strikes by back and straight up on the center line, which I wish he kind of sidestepped more. He has a big arsenal of kicks, kind of kicks everywhere. He'll use his sign well in the clinch, grind in there. Good strike in the clinch, especially throwing up his knees. I like his body lock takedowns. He will look to get the fight to the ground, and a lot of times, again, it's very like opportunistic, catching a kick or something like that. Not a big like power through your hips kind of guy. One thing, his defense isn't that great, but he makes it worse because he loves jumping for guillotines. He's very Dustin Poirier-like in that sense. I'm not very high in either guy. They just feel like card fillers to me, and I don't mean that insult. You make it in the UFC, like obviously he's still one of the best fighters in the world, but they're not. Neither of these guys are ever going to crack the top 15. I'm going to go with the UFC newcomer. I'm going to go with Nguyen. He's the bigger guy. He's got more tools on the feet. I say we get some back and forth fight with Nguyen, distance kicks being the difference. Give me Nguyen by decision.
Yeah, I think a lot of the reason that, I'm still just kind of clinging to Errens a little bit is one, I mean, he's not quite as big as Nguyen, but he himself is a good sized featherweight and he seems well-rounded, and he's, now in back-to-back fights, put up a good fight against just better fighters like William Gomez, is a relatively big time prospect, and Errens hung in there with him and had him in a bit of trouble. Sung Woo Choi is a reliable kind of just outside the top 15 or 20 guy, and Errens was right there. But I think even at 29, we've already kind of seen the hard cap on how good he's going to be. Nguyen, I mean, he's a guy that's been training and fighting in Texas for a long time. He's improved a lot. He is better than the guy I mean, dude, he got whooped by Alon Cruz. It's not just that Cruz knocked him out with this great flying knee. Like, Alon Cruz was beating him pretty bad all along, and Cruz turned out not to be UFC material me picking him against Uros Medic aside.
Yeah, I think he is though. But yeah, I think he's all right. I think he'll come around.
No. I'm talking about Alan Cruz.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about. I think Alan Cruz is.
Oh,
I think Alan Cruz is all right.
All right. Well, I mean, we'll get to it next time. Next time he fights. Nguyen continues to improve. He's still just 30 years old. I'm with you. Very, very likely that neither of these guys is a future top 15 fighter, considering what it takes to make the top 15 at 145 pounds. And calling somebody card filler, it's like calling someone a gatekeeper. It sounds insulting, but for 95% of fighters, that's something to aspire to. I mean, we're about to get to Julian Erosa and Billy Quarantillo further up this card. They are both quote unquote card filler at 145 pounds. They both made a lot of money in the last 5 years and entertained a lot of people and, frankly done pretty well for themselves. If either of these guys can aspire to that, that's pretty good. I agree that we're probably going to see a lot of silly spinning stuff. It's going to look like Beyblade. Either one of them is going to go flying completely out of the cage, or they're just going to kind of slow down and it's just going to, end in the middle. I like Nguyen to win a decision here. I think he has a little more of a round winning style. He throws the kind of volume that I think is going to win rounds. He'll be willing to take Errens down to seal rounds or to cut things off if Errens is starting to build some momentum on the feet. I don't know if Errens has the presence of mind to do the same if the roles are reversed. So I don't know if I'm almost 2-1 comfortable with it, but I'm pretty comfortable with Nguyen winning a decision here as well. Next up on the UFC on ESPN 53 undercard is a men's bantamweight matchup between Miles Johns and Cody Gibson. Johns, the 29-year-old Kansas native, is 13-2 with 1 no contest overall. He is 4-2 with 1 no contest since joining the UFC out of season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series. That no contest came in his last fight. He beat Dan Argueta in what seemed to be a pretty impressive win at the time. This was at the same Fiziev versus Gamrot card last September that several fighters on this card fought on. That was overturned just weeks after when he tested positive for banned performance enhancer Turinabol, a pretty common steroid. He got a suspension, which lapsed just last month, so he got into the cage pretty quickly after that. And had that result overturned. He is stepping in here for Davey Grant, who had originally been scheduled to take on Gibson. So yeah, Johns is back looking to redeem that blemish on his record at the expense of Gibson. Gibson, 36-year-old Californian, is 19-9 overall. He is 1-4 across multiple stints in the UFC. He was in the UFC in the kind of mid-teens, washed out at 1-3. He rejoined the UFC through season 31 of The Ultimate Fighter, which was a second chancers season, made it all the way to the final where he lost to Brad Katona. That was at UFC 292 last August. So he is now on a second stint in the UFC. He is now a tough runner-up, and he is, well, your favorite in this fight, Keith, is -150. Your underdog is +120. Who are they?
Miles Johns is a favorite.
You are correct. Johns is -150, Gibson +120. You spit that out right away. Didn't have to think about it a bit. I mean, I would argue that the line is only as close as it is because Johns, had his last win overturned. Because otherwise, the guy that beat Dan Argueta the way he did, you would think would run right over Gibson. I mean, tell me if you see it differently, and if still, a couple weeks shy of his 30th birthday, you still believe in Miles Johns to any extent?
These are tough. So Cody Gibson, I mean, let me ask you this question. Do you think it's a harder fight, Miles Johns, or would have, who was it?
It was Davey Grant. Oh, I
think Davey Grant's a harder fight.
I think Davey Grant's a harder fight. I think the line would have been wider if it was Davey Grant, but if Gibson had lost to Grant, he probably loses a fun back and forth scrap that maybe picks him up a bonus check. If he loses to Johns, there's a possibility he just gets starched.
Yeah,
or he gets laid and prayed. So he could lose ugly either way. I'm not sure which one I'd want if I were Cody Gibson, but I agree that.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Cody Gibson, I mean, it's really hard to get excited about a 36-year-old coming back to the UFC, coming off of a loss. He's not a great athlete, but the dude's big. I met him in Boston. He's a big dude. He's insanely tough. I mean, look at the amount of damage he took from Brad Katona, and he just kept coming. I mean, I think he broke his orbital bone late in that fight. He like put his hand up to his face for a second and then just kept going. Like, yeah, my chin or my cheekbone just cracked in half, but okay, let me keep trying to win this fight. Yeah, he took ungodly amount of damage in that fight. What I like about him, I like his pressure. I love his output. He throws a lot of straight shots straight down the pipe. He does drop his hands, leaving open counters, which could be a big issue against a guy like Miles Johns. He has underrated power himself, though he can overthrow his shots, which leaves him open to be countered. Despite having the range on a lot of his opponents, he loves to brawl. He's got good body kicks. He can get a takedown. He's not really known for his grappling, but he can get a takedown here and there just to kind of win rounds. Overall decent grappler, but nothing spectacular. Good cardio though. Like he's going to go hard the entire fight. I keep going back to his last fight. The Brad Katona fight was bonkers. One of the best fights of all time. And he's still going hard, throwing hard, same zip late in the fight. Miles Johns, he's a short, compact wrestle boxer, throws a lot of feints, but he'll throw a lot of feints, but won't throw enough of the actual strikes. I mean, I go back to that Vince Morales fight. I mean, his output in that fight was so bad. I like that he works behind a jab. He follows it to throw hard hooks and uppercuts, but he loads up on everything, trying to get that highlight reel KO. I mean, he does have power, but we've seen him land it. But the problem is, I think he puts himself in worse advantage trying to get that KO. He can overthrow his shots, what leaves him to be countered. This is an issue. He's had issues with trying to get guys who move a lot. I mean, there was something that he really struggled trying to pick up the timing of Mario Batista. He has hard leg kicks, but doesn't check leg kicks at all. He's a good wrestler. He's got some quick entries, pretty good at winning scrambles. He's also very physically strong. He grabs the leg and he launches it. The issue is he has, other than the Argetta fight, he got 2 takedowns against Argetta, but for the most part, he has completely abandoned his wrestling. It was like he was a stretch where you'd never think this guy was a wrestler other than just looking at him by his build. But he refused to wrestle. He kind of fell in love with that knockout power. He gets to fight the ground. He's got some hard ground and pound. He defends takedowns and attacks with guillotines and barrel strikes, which is really surprising. He doesn't look for sprawl, and he's looking to try to catch submissions there, which leaves him to lose positions and actually get taken down by weaker wrestlers. He has given up his back in fights. I mean, John Castaneda caught him recently in a submission. A few years ago, I would have laughed about this fight, and I would have been like, Miles Johns, next topic, let's go. But I think this is more even than that. Johns has not lived up to the buzz that he brought to the UFC. I don't think he was as good against Argetta as you did. I mean, he won, but he doesn't wrestle. He limits his striking chances by looking for one punch. I'm going to go the upset, man. I'm going to say Gibson stays in his face. I'm going to say Gibson volumes him. I think he breaks him with pressure. I think Johns coming in short notice, that doesn't make me more confident, going against a guy that wins on volume and pressure. I'm going to say Johns continues to disappoint. I'm going to say Gibson wins a decision.
Man, sold. Like, I completely agree that Johns is he's not quite lived up to his potential.
I was big on him. I was really big on him coming off the Contender Series. I was huge. I was like leading the pack. I'm with you. I'm with you. And I was there for his first UFC loss. I mean, his first loss period. I mean, he was undefeated going into UFC 247, got iced by Mario Batista. That has aged well. Mario Batista's turned out to be a hell of a fighter. But at the time, it was Johns, a super prospect, against Batista, a decent prospect. But yeah, Johns has not fixed the things that were, like, he's not fixed the flaws.
he's gotten worse at or abandoned some of the things he was good at. I like that you pointed out that, I mean, dude, tons of wrestle boxers get strikeritis. It's been a phenomenon for literally as long as wrestlers have been in the sport. But John's has gotten it early and as bad as any of them. And it is like a cost check thing, because I can understand it a little bit with Henderson, because, you know, he got older and older. His was a style of wrestling that was never going to be, and he
actually did knock people silly.
Yeah.
And Josh Emmett, same thing. He knocked people. Koscheck, one or two really good ones, and then he was sold on himself.
Yeah.
Tyron Woodley.
Tyron
Woodley. I really think Tyron Woodley couldn't wrestle anymore. But anyways.
Just the injuries. You're probably right.
Cardio, and he was very good at disguising it. Yeah. That like power got people scared to come in and just slowed the pace and kept him much more relevant for much longer than he should have been. I mean, not relevant. He was champion for a long time.
Yeah, he was champion.
Yeah.
One of the things that had me believing in John's on the way up was that he was willing to wrestle. Like, he had good wins on the regional scene, a lot of them here in Texas, like beating like Levi Moles and Adrian Yanez, because he was willing to wrestle.
Yeah, those are two good guys.
Those are two good guys. And Moles himself is a good wrestler, and John's out wrestled him. He beat Yanez in a 5-round fight. The crowd did not absolutely love it. Like, they did not get the fight they were hoping for. No. He didn't care. He did what he needed to get the win, and that's kind of gone away. Like, I don't know if he'd beat Yanez again if they fought this year, but I know he'd try to conduct the whole thing trying to knock Yanez out on the feet. So long way around to saying I'm with you, especially because Johns is coming into this on relatively short notice and off of a positive test for PEDs. Neither of those make me confident that all of a sudden he's going to have better volume in the third round, better durability than he has in his last couple fights. If anything, those are going to have fallen off, and perfect time for Gibson to, I can't believe I'm picking a guy who's 1-4 in the UFC and is a 36-year-old bantamweight, but I'm with you. If Gibson shoots right into a guillotine, as he's done multiple times in his career, I guess he could lose that way, but I don't think Gibson's going to be shooting takedowns on Johns. I think he's probably just going to piece him up at range and not get caught with a haymaker. Give me Gibson by decision as well. We head back to the featherweight division as Ricardo Ramos takes on Julian Erosa. Ramos, the 28-year-old Brazilian, is 16-5 overall. He is 7-4 in the UFC. He has alternated wins and losses in his last 6 fights over the last 5 years. He fought just once last year, got guillotined in the first round by Charles Jourdain. That was at the Fizzy versus Gamrot night that accounted for a third of the fighters on this card. Prior to that, he had not fought since summer of 2022 when he iced Danny Chavez with a spinning back elbow in just a minute and 10 seconds. So he'll be looking to get back in the win column here. I'm sure he would like to fight more than once this year, but it all starts with Erosa. 34-year-old Washington State native is 28-11 overall. He is 6-7 across 3 different stints in the UFC. That doesn't sound great. He's 5-3 this time around. As I mentioned multiple times, he is the first fighter to complete the trifecta. He joined the UFC through The Ultimate Fighter, then joined it again through Dana White's Contender Series, and then joined it for the third time as a COVID-era late replacement. But since coming back as a COVID-era late replacement, again, he's 5-3, and at one point he was 5-1. He's on a 2-fight losing streak right now. He got knocked out by Alex Caceres about a year and a half ago. Fought just once last year. It was almost a year ago. Got knocked out by Fernando Padilla in the first round. So Erosa had been on a fantastic run. He was a cool story, but he has back-to-back first-round knockout losses, and he's only fought twice in the last 2 years and change. So he's looking to turn that around and prove that at 34, he still has something to offer this division. Your favorite in this fight, Keith, is -160. Your underdog is +130. Who are they?
Ramos is the favorite.
You are correct. Ramos is the favorite. Man, Okay, so
we said the last time we're all confident, and then we both picked the underdog. So let's see if we do it again.
Well, but it makes sense why Ramos is the favorite. Neither of these guys has been super busy. I mean, they each fought just once in 2022, once in 2023. But Ramos is younger. For what it's worth, he's looked better in his last 2 fights. I mean, first, a note about Julian Erosa, and I said this a couple fights ago. Here is the coolness of being a quote-unquote card filler. Erosa did not have a great, last 18 months or so, but for the first part of 2022, his first 2 fights of 2022, he beat Steven Peterson, he beat Hakeem Dawodu. Both those guys missed weight. So he got 20 or 30% of each of their purses, and then both of those fights won fight of the night, and he got both bonuses. So he got $200,000 in bonuses, just in bonuses, and then he lost to Caceres that year. Without looking, I bet Julian Erosa was the second highest paid UFC featherweight in 2022 after Alex Volkanovski, because Holloway, Ortega, and Rodriguez each only fought once that year. Volkanovski fought twice, so I bet Volkanovski made more money than Erosa. But yeah. Dude, Erosa probably made like $300,000 in 2022. Like, he openly said, "I love my opponents to keep missing weight. I just barely bought a house with like the money these guys gave me."
That's great. I love it. That's great.
Julian Erosa,
how does it make $300K in a fight?
He's a former champ. He probably does. So Erosa might be the third. Yeah,
regardless.
And Korean Zombie fought once. Yeah, point remains. All the other guys in that conversation are champs or top 5 fighters or people like Korean Zombie who have headlined 12 cards in a row, and then Julian Erosa. There's something to be said for just being there and putting on fun fights. Up until a year or so ago, my line on Erosa was he has all the offensive tools, none of the defensive tools, but that's not fair. None of the defensive instincts. He's aggressive, he's bent on the finish, and he's an equal opportunity distributor of highlights to his own reel and to your reel. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's gotten to the point where, okay, it's mostly to his opponent's reels, and getting knocked out by Fernando Padilla is one thing. Alex Caceres is not a knockout machine, and Alex Caceres head kicked him. The thing about Julian Erosa is that as soon as the durability slipped even just a little bit, it was going to go from a whole lot of fun to kind of depressing. And I'm worried that that's where Erosa is right now. I'd love to be wrong. The UFC is a more fun place when he's there, but Ramos being younger, having good power. You look at his record, he's got 4 KOs, 7 submissions. He's a longtime Team Alpha male guy, even though he's Brazilian. That doesn't tell the story. Like, he's a hard hitter. And some of his submissions have been set up by hurting his opponents on the feet or his opponents, like shooting into bad situations. I like Ramos here. If I were a betting man, I'd steer completely clear of this one since Erosa himself is always just one head kick or, standing back take away from ruining your parlay or just ruining your whole weekend. But I like Ramos here, and if I'm picking Ramos, I might as well take Ramos by finish. And I see no reason to mess around and think it's going to take longer than 5 minutes. I think this will be a whole hell of a lot of fun for as long as it lasts, considering that, again, Ramos is the younger, fresher guy. For what it's worth, talking about these two, he is the more buttoned down defensively. I'm saying we get a club and sub. He hurts Erosa on the feet. That's been the main problem with Erosa, is that shots from guys not known for their power have all of a sudden been putting him on skates. Erosa shoots for a bad takedown, and he's the one that gets guillotined, or Ramos just slips to the back real quick, chokes him out. But yeah, give me Ramos by first round sub here.
Yeah, I don't know if Julian Erosa knows that he can block punches, if that's allowed.
Well, with things other than his face. Yeah, it's like...
Yeah, he's going with the strategy of headbutting his opponent's fists.
Yeah.
Julian Erosa is our guy, man. I love this guy. He's huge for the weight, long and lengthy guy. He's got a 76-inch reach, constantly switching stances. He's got great volume. He beat two really good fighters, and Hakeem Dawodu and Sean Woodson, just by pressuring them.
Mm-hmm.
he was landing some good power shots on Hakeem Dawodu. Dawodu was, in my opinion, was the best performance of his career, which is so funny that it was followed right up by 2 terrible performances. He's a guy that he's got all this length and everything, and he's just says, screw it, let me go in the pocket, let me throw down and brawl, which is not a wise decision considering he has taken so much damage. He's a guy who just trusts his chin, and unfortunately his chin has failed him a lot. I mean, you mentioned he's knocked out back-to-back fights, Alex Caceres and Fernando Padilla early. When he does stay in range, he's got some long-range kicks, he's got some good teep kicks. I like that, he can. I don't like that he brought. I mean, it's fun. Don't get me wrong, it's fun. But if I was his coach, I'd have him wrestle more. I mean, he's a very underrated offensive wrestler. Now he's a weak defensive wrestler, and he makes it worse by jumping guillotines, constantly looking for subs. I mean, he's wild on the feet. He's wild on the ground too. I mean, he's looking to scramble and jump back into subs, and he doesn't worry about secure positions. But against Dawodu, again, like best performance, he took his back, had a lot of times, backpacking him, and he's got great cardio. I mean, he won't stop bringing it. Ramos is a well-rounded fighter. He's a really good athlete. He's a Muay Thai striker that he can be a little too cautious at times, many single strikes, but he's got a really good kicking game. Such dexterity in his hips. He'll throw up a high kick with ease. He loves his spinning stuff. He loves his question mark kicks. I mean, I always go back to that like KO of Ibn Sahabi. I mean, that's one of the best KOs I've ever seen. He likes to work from distance. The key is to press him on his back foot. Go back to like the Tukov fight. Tukov was able to do that to him, beat him with pressure. He will get in the Muay Thai clinch and grind in there. He's a very underrated wrestler. He gets a lot of takedowns. He likes body lock takedowns. He also showed some good wrestling takedown defense against Tukov. Though I do think Tugov's wrestling is overrated. I've said that before. He's a good grappler, good top game. He's got 7 subs. He had those, long legs that he uses to, make it hard to get him off your back. He plays BJJ off his back, which I don't like. And he was caught recently in a submission by Charles Jordan. I think it's a harder fight to pick. Ramos is definitely the better fighter with more skills, but he fights down to his competition sometimes. Erosa has durability issues, but his volume is an issue for many guys. Juicy J is a fan favorite of ours. I could see him weathering an early storm and taking rounds 2 and 3 with volume. I really want to take that. I really want to take Erosa by split decision. I even have it in my notes to take him by split decision, but then I'm sitting there and I'm listening to you and I'm sitting there like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, you're just taking Erosa because that's our boy. And shame on me for doing this if he wins. But Ramos is still too skilled. He hits. He's a more technical striker. He's better everywhere. Yeah, I'm gonna say Ramos catches him. I'm gonna say this. Yeah, I'm gonna say the same way you did. Clubs him, jumps on his back, locks up the end. Give me Ramos. I'll say second round submission. You talked me into switching my picks.
The top prelim at UFC Vegas 89 is a lightweight matchup between Kurt Holobaugh and Trey Ogden. Holobaugh, the 37-year-old Louisiana native, is 20-7 with 1 no contest overall. He is 1-4 across 3 different stints in the UFC. Just talked about Julian Erosa and his trifecta. Holobaugh has the trifecta from like a half generation before that, as he joined the UFC out of the acquisition of Strikeforce, then Dana White's Contender Series, the very first season, and Tough 31, which is how he got back this time. So he's 1-4 across multiple stints in the promotion, but the one win came in his last appearance. He fought at UFC 292, beat Austin Hubbard by a second round submission, got his first UFC win. So good on him for one. That's something nobody will ever be able to take away from him. He'll try to make it 2 and maybe start writing his own Julian Erosa type story against Ogden. Ogden, 34-year-old Kansas City native, is 16-6 with 1 no contest overall. He is 1-2 with 1 no contest in the UFC. The no contest came in his last outing. He fought at UFC Fight Night Allen versus Craig, was a couple minutes away from beating Nicholas Mota, had him in a submission, Mike Beltran stepped in, stopped the fight prematurely. It was a robbery for everybody involved, but particularly for Ogden, because even if he didn't get the submission, he was less than 2 minutes away from getting a completely straightforward 30-27 win. It was a bad look. And I don't know if you watched last Saturday's fights.
Right.
I know you were out of town. Beltran did it again. Well, spoiler, Beltran did it again. It didn't end up completely ruining the fight, but one of the fights, he jumped in.
I know who's won, so don't you have to say, you can say the fight. Okay.
The Jackie Amorim versus Corey McKenna fight. Yeah. Amorim had McKenna in an armbar. There was no tap. I mean, McKenna was in a world of trouble, but Beltran jumps in, puts his hands on him. At that point, fight should be over, but there was no tap, so he lets him go, and Amorim gets the actual tap a few seconds later. But that could have been another no contest. That could have been the same goof, within. Yeah. Come on, Beltran is normally a pretty reliable ref, but his just being so on top of things and so bent on being in control of what's going on. Anyway, back to the Holobaugh versus Ogden fight. Your favorite is minus 150. Your underdog is plus 120. Who are they?
Oh, I don't know. That's tough. I mean, they both look good in their last fights. Holobaugh just won the Ultimate Fighter show, so I'm going to say he's the favorite.
You were undefeated on this card, but Keith's O had to go. Ogden is minus 150. Holobaugh plus 120.
Vegas doesn't give a shit about the Ultimate Fighter show. They're like everybody else.
Man, I'm glad that Kurt Holobaugh. I'm glad that Kurt Holobaugh got a win in the UFC, and it was a good win. Austin Hubbard's not a bad fighter. Holobaugh finished him. That's good. I have a little bit of love for him as a longtime Louisiana guy, but outside of, just a top 10 or top 15 fighter where he'd be completely overmatched, Ogden is as bad a matchup for him as there is, because Holobaugh is fighting as well as he is at age 37 because he's tough, persistent, and he's got kind of a grindy style that never really depended on A+ athleticism anyway, so it's aged well. He's a good wrestler and grappler with decent power. Again, always been a little overmatched at the UFC level at featherweight as well as lightweight, but the kind of grindy win that he gets on the regional scenes in between his stints in the UFC is just, that's the worst possible route to victory against Trey Ogden. Ogden is bigger, younger, fresher in terms of he's been busier at a higher level against a higher level of opponent. And he himself is a guy that oftentimes just kind of wears down his opponents and really starts running game on them on the ground late. So yeah, this is a bad matchup for Holobaugh. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, you look at his picture under me. I'm not saying Holobaugh is old or has been in the UFC multiple times, but he's wearing Chegg shorts. Chegg has not sponsored MMA fighters since 2011. I mean, here, Holobaugh is a good grappler, and he's been getting better and better. Each time he pops back up in the UFC, he's a little better. So I'm not picking the sub here, but I do think Ogden just wears Holobaugh down. And if this fight spends appreciable amounts of time on the ground, I think we're going to get long stretches where Holobaugh is just in pure defensive mode. Ogden's on his back, fishing for chokes, boxing his ears, got him in a body triangle, that kind of stuff. If it spends appreciable time on the feet, Ogden is hittable on the feet, but not to the point where I think Holobaugh is going to clock him and knock him out. I would see Ogden at least holding his own on the feet as well, just as a taller guy with better reach who is good at least trying to keep the fight at his best range, kind of like the outside edge of boxing range. Yeah, this is just a bad matchup for Holobaugh. Give me Ogden probably winning all 3 rounds in a fun fight. And if Ogden does manage to really wear him down and tap him out late, that wouldn't shock me either.
Yeah. I mean, Kurt Holobaugh, he's a well-rounded fighter, very aggressive on the feet, pocket boxer, throws combos, nice 1-2s down the pipe. Underrated power. I mean, the guy's a big dude. I love that he targets the body.
It's hard to believe he used to be a featherweight. Like, I think he fought Matt Bessette on the Contender Series.
Yeah, he did.
At featherweight, and he looked
he's a big boy. He's a big boy.
Yeah.
Defensively, he pillars, which I hate. He also roll with punches. He keeps his chin high in the air, which is an issue. He's willing to eat a shot to land one of his own. He can use his size well in the clinch, grind on his opponents. Not a strong offensive wrestler, but if he gets to fight to the ground, he's a very good grappler. He's a weak defensive wrestler, but he's got 10 subs on his record. Can get subs off of his back, and he's got good cardio. He's got cardio and heart. He's got to keep going hard. Ogden, you mentioned he got screwed against Moda. It's too bad. He's also a large dude for the weight class. Moves well on his feet. His striking. They've had mixed results. Sometimes he's got low output, too many single strikes, but he's let his hands go. He's got a good jab. He will look for his overhand right a little bit too much for my liking, but I like that he goes to the body. Good head movement to avoid shots. I like his kicking game, but he doesn't check leg kicks. The one fight that always keeps bothering me is that stupid Jordan Levitt fight where he got kicked like 200 times. It just seems like it's just a loss that I just not aged well. And anyways, that I can't get out of my head. He can wrestle, but often he'll shoot from too far away, kind of overextend himself. He's best when he's just pressuring and then drops underneath his foe with a reactionary double. Strong takedown defense, good top control, but he has struggled to get off the bottom with Jordan Levitt. He did show good submission defense in that fight. And he's got 11 subs on his own record. He caught Levitt in a guillotine, and Levitt probably got saved by the bell. His cardio faded against Levitt, which was probably cost him in that fight. Again, I don't know if my hatred for Levitt, and I don't hate the guy personally, but like just not a fan of him. Like has made me be so hesitant to like stop believing in Ogden, even though he's looked good lately. Holobaugh's got the output. He's not cleaner. I mean, Ogden's younger. He's more likely to get the fight to the ground. I think we're gonna have some really fun scrambles on the ground. Holobaugh is too much the old school jiu-jitsu guy. Like he'll play the jiu-jitsu when he shouldn't be playing jiu-jitsu. He should be trying to win position. Well, Ogden's a little bit more new school in that. I think that little detail might be the difference. I think it's a closer fight than you think. Give me Ogden by split decision in a fight where, man, if Ogden opens up big, a bigger favorite 2-1 or something like that, I throw money down on Holobaugh because to me, I think this is the pick 'em.
The 6-fight main card of UFC Vegas 89 opens up with a featherweight matchup between Fernando Padilla and Luis Pajuelo. Padilla, the 27-year-old Mexican by way of Southern California, is 15-5 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC as the former Fury Fighting Championship featherweight champ. He won his debut, being one of the guys that accounted for Julian Erosa's slide, knocked him out last April at UFC on ESPN Song versus Simone, then came back in September at Noche UFC and did not score one for Team Mexico as he lost a unanimous decision to Kyle Nelson. He will look to get back in the win column against the debuting Pajuelo. 29-year-old Peruvian is 8-1 overall. He last fought in August, knocking out Robbie King in the first round on Dana White's Contender Series. His win streak is 5 overall. He steps in here. Okay, Padilla is the favorite. The debuting Pajuelo is plus 130.
What do I know? I never said I was good at this. I never said I was good at picking. I'm not saying I was good at anything. Yeah, I can tell some good stories every once in a while. That's about it. But
who you got in this one and how? I mean, it sounds like maybe you're losing some steam on Fernando Padilla, but like, tell me how you see this fight going.
Yeah. Padilla, there's a lot of things I like about him. He's a long and lengthy fighter. He's got really good volume, constantly motion forward. He's a pretty technical striker, got some tight boxing, uses feints well to set up his shots. He's accurate, just kind of touches, wait until there's an opening. He parries with his lead hand to get in range, which I really like. I'm big into parrying, which a lot of guys I mean doesn't do it enough. His left hook is his best blow. I mean, he showed off his power against Julian Erosa. Again, the knockout hasn't aged well, being that, you know, Erosa's been tagged a lot, but still, that's still a good veteran you got out of there. He throws kicks, but often he'll throw naked kicks. And what I shouldn't say often, because he's got good kicks, but he'll throw them naked, and he doesn't throw them enough. I think something should be a bigger part of his game. I like that he can grind in the plum clinch. He's got some good dirty boxing. I mean, go back to like the Cameron Graves fight. It was an elbow that he threw that he destroyed Graves to get in the UFC. Not much of an offensive wrestler in that sense, but if he gets to the ground, I mean, he's slick. He's got 8 submissions on his record. Pajuelo, he's a boxer, nonstop pressure. He's moving forward, good output, attacks with combinations. He sits on his punches. He's got really good power. He likes to brawl in the pocket, rips the body. Good calf kicks, though. He will throw a lot of naked kicks. High guard defense, which he kind of pillars, which I'm not crazy about. He'll back straight up to avoid strikes. Not much of an offensive wrestler, but when I've seen him on top, mean grind around. Go back to his Contender Series fight. The way he finished that fight, he was on top. He just kind of gets off his opponent briefly, throws a knee for the top position. It hurts his opponent, finishes it with ground and pound. It was a really beautiful thing you don't see a lot. But he's a weak defensive wrestler. You can take him down. This is a really fun fight. Like, this is a fight that, again, pre-tape study, he was definitely not one of the ones that I was really looking to. Then when I dug into it more, I like this fight. I think this is really fun. I think Padilla is the cleaner fighter, while Pajuelo has probably the more aggression and power. I think both guys are going to have their moments. I like both guys. That Kyle Nelson loss is not a good look for Padilla, who's kind of was putting on a little bit of a run there where it looked like he could be a guy to watch. I'm going to say that's one of those just head-scratching losses where it's just like that guy who's better than a fighter just has like a bad loss on his record. I shouldn't say Padilla doesn't have the best record overall, but I mean, just recently.
And Nelson's looked pretty good recently. He's been on a little bit of a tiny run.
It's Kyle Nelson. Yeah, you're right. You're right. No, you're right. He is on a run, so I should shut my mouth. So I'm going to say Padilla wins a decision. He's long. He's a clean striker. I think both guys have their moments. I like both guys. I'm definitely going to like the winner moving forward, but give me Padilla by decision.
Yeah, I feel a lot of what you're putting down there. Like, I'm high on Padilla, and I jumped on the train when he won the Fury title by knocking out Cameron Graves. Like, Graves is a guy that he's one of those guys that I've had my eye on as a Houston area, like Texas prospect for a while. And while he's lost a few fights here and there, he hadn't lost many like that. Like, just Graves is a good fighter. He's a guy that I wouldn't have been surprised to have made his way to the Contender Series or even the UFC by now. And I felt that way before I saw him 2 or 3 times a week. But like, for Padilla to do that opened up my eyes. And then obviously doing what he did to Erosa. I'm with you. Nelson is a tricky veteran who's looked pretty good recently. This may be just one of those blips. You know, Kyle, like you always talk about the escalators. That may have been just like the last moment where Kyle Nelson would have beat Fernando Padilla. Like, we may look at that fight 3 years from now and be like, man, you know, Nelson now is on a 4-fight losing streak and Padilla's, you know, on the outskirts of the top 15. I don't know. I agree with you that Padilla's cleaner striking and his generally good use of his height and reach. Like, I know he isn't, but he must feel like the tallest man in Mexico. Like, just, you know, I think that's what's going to make the difference here.
He's the Zheleznyakova of Mexico.
Yeah.
I was not a fair, Dave.
like he's the Dariya Zheleznyakova of Mexico. Yeah, like because if Pajuelo can make it an ugly scrap, that I think that represents his best route to victory. He's probably the harder hitter on a shot by shot basis. And that's exactly how he beat Robbie Ring on the Contender Series. Like going into that, Ring was the undefeated prospect. He was like a 2-1 favorite over Pajuelo, but they got in a phone booth fight and Pajuelo just kind of, I'm not saying he is Dustin Poirier, but he did the Dustin Poirier thing like, oh, we're just going to bite down on the mouth guards. I trust myself to roll with your best shots and slip them, and you're not going to be able to do the same, and you're going to go down. If he can draw Padilla into that kind of fight, that represents a good route to victory for him. But I do think that's the outside chance. I think Padilla is better than he looked against Nelson. He's more like the guy we saw just wipe Erosa and Graves. I'm not saying he does that against Pajuelo. I think he's going to have to be more measured. But I think he gets it done. And if he wants, I think he can take this thing to the ground. And I think he definitely has an advantage there. Gimme. Man, it's hard for me to pick this on a, you know what? Give me Padilla to win this by late sub. I think we're going to have some real fun striking for the first couple rounds, but I think once Padilla turns to the ground game, if he decides to, either because Pajuelo's getting tired or if Pajuelo's getting stuff he doesn't like on the feet and he turns to like desperation takedowns, I think Padilla's superiority on the ground is really going to show. I'm going to say Padilla wins this. The smart pick would be by decision, but I'm going to say he gets a late sub. Give me Padilla by third round submission. Next up on the UFC on ESPN 53 main card is another featherweight matchup. This one featuring Billy Quarantillo and the returning Youssef Zalal. Quarantillo, the 35-year-old Floridian, is 18-5 overall. He is 6-3 since joining the UFC out of season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series. He has been alternating wins and losses almost since he's been in the UFC, but he did win his last time out, took a unanimous decision over Damon Jackson last August at UFC on ESPN Sandhagen versus Font. His only other appearance of last year was a knockout loss at the hands, or more accurately, the knee of Edson Barboza last April at the Holloway versus Allen fight night. So Quarantillo looking to break that alternating wins and losses thing and win 2 in a row for the first time since 2020. He had been scheduled to take on Gabriel Miranda, but Miranda was forced to withdraw a couple weeks ago, and back comes Youssef Zalal. The 27-year-old Moroccan by way of Denver is 13-5-1 overall. He went 3-1 in his first run in the UFC. He joined the UFC. He's one that joined at UFC 247, the last card I went to before COVID. He won his first 3 in the UFC. Then he lost 3 in a row. He went out on a draw. He had a majority draw with Damon Blackshear. The UFC released him. He won 3 straight in Colorado in 2022 and 2023, and that was good enough to get him to call back. He is your slight underdog. Quarantillo, maybe not surprisingly, is minus 160, Zalal plus 130. Youssef Zalal always seemed, I mean, he was a little bit of a deceptive fighter for me. He, presents as a kickboxer, talks about himself like a kickboxer. You watch him in open workouts, you watch some of his regional highlight reels, and he looks like a kickboxer. And, Morocco's had plenty of them. But once he hit the UFC, I mean, he would try to kickbox, but honestly, his wrestling became a more effective tool for him. The more surprising thing than him going 3-1 is that he went to the judges every single time. So the knockouts that, and the quick strike submissions that we saw on the regional scene just completely dried up for him. He was young when the UFC let him go. I mean, I think he was still like 25. Going back to, Colorado, fighting in regional shows, he instantly reclaimed what made him seem really exciting before he got to the UFC. I mean, he got 3 first-round stoppages. 2 of them were knockouts. One was, it wasn't really a club and sub, but he was getting the better things on the feet, then, plowed the guy to the ground and got a submission. I wonder if he's turning a corner. And I don't have any objective reason to believe that. Like, I watched all his UFC fights. I watched his fights in Colorado since then. He still seems like Youssef Zalal at age 27. He probably still is improving incrementally. He's at Factory X, which is one of the very best teams in the sport, especially for guys in that weight range. They just have so many of them. But there have been more than one kind of bantamweight, featherweight fighter out of Factory X over the last year or two that have been saying Zalal's going to be back. He's killing all of us in the gym. He's turned some kind of corner. That may just be teammates gassing up their teammates, but it makes me more excited to see him back than I otherwise would be. The rest of it coming back as a short notice, a relatively short notice replacement. You couldn't find a much better guy for that than Zalal, because Zalal's a guy that has fought at 135 pounds. He's always had a good motor at 145. Like, we've never seen him lose a fight because he was the more tired guy, which is good because, he's going to be going up against Quarantillo, one of the more weaponized cardio types in the UFC. So much of me wants to pick Zalal, and then I just realize that it's me kind of buying into the hype from the interviews I've heard with his teammates. If they're telling the truth and Zalal is now the truth at 145 and he's going to be a whole different guy than he was last time, I'll be happy to be wrong. UFC is a fun place with him in it and would be even more of a fun place if he started finishing people. But until I see otherwise, I have a hard time picking the Zalal I know, who is a good output, kind of low power kickboxer with surprisingly good wrestling and kind of a grindy style, against Billy Quarantillo, who is one of the low key kings of that style in the UFC. Like, I've seen Quarantillo outlast guys like Damon Jackson, who have kind of the same playbook. I've seen him use that to just flat out beat people like Spike Carlisle and Alexander Hernandez, who couldn't hang. This is one where even if Zalal is an improved version of the fighter he was, Quarantillo is a tough ask. Give me Quarantillo by decision here. I think we'll probably have individually close rounds, but Quarantillo's not going to get tired. He's going to use pressure. One of the things that has kept Zalal from being as good of a kickboxer as he looks like in highlight reels is that he does not respond well to pressure. Billy Quarantillo is a big time pressure guy. So yeah, not a great matchup for Zalal, but again, if I'm wrong and he really has just morphed into his final form at Factory X over the last 2 years, would love to see it.
Dude, you got me more pumped for this fight than I was. I mean, I'm always pumped for a Billy Quarantillo fight. I mean, the guy's so much fun. I mean, he's nothing but action. Yeah. I mean, he's a definition of a volume striker whose whole game is just beat guys with pressure. Insane ability to constantly press the action. I mean, he's absolutely fearless, walks through shots. I mean, the perfect example of that is the Alexander Hernandez fight where he's getting beat by Hernandez early, and he just keeps sliding in the pocket, unloading combinations until Hernandez couldn't take it anymore, and then Quarantillo just took over. His overhand left is his best strike. He's not a great athlete, so he's not explosive. He drops his hands. Doesn't really read chambers. He's open to counters. He has like surprisingly good power. He hates. He wants to be the bull. He hates being bullied back. I always go back to like the Gavin Tucker fight. It was a long time ago, but Gavin Tucker had success by forcing Quarantillo back. He does do this like dumb flying knee that he loves doing to just kind of close the distance. But he's an underrated. You mentioned he's an underrated wrestler. Like chain wrestles together. And the biggest thing is not the skill in the wrestling; it's that mindset. It's a mindset to not give up on the takedown. He's a weak defensive wrestler. I mean, Gavin Tucker took him down 7 times. He was even taken down twice by Alexander Hernandez. But he's such an aggressive grappler. He'll sweep. He'll figure out a way to get on top. He does struggle to keep his opponents down, and that's because he's chasing submission. But he's a serious threat. He's got 5 subs. He looks for subs off his back or just to kind of create a scramble. He's a submission throw off the back. I mean, he looked for a Google Plata in his last fight. Now he's taking a lot of damage, but putting himself in that, and you got to worry about his chin because he's taking a lot of damage on the feet. I mean, I go back to like the beating he took from Edson Barbosa. Zalal, yeah, Zalal was a guy that I saw the potential before he, was cut in the UFC. He's a good athlete. He's elusive. He's long and lengthy. I'd say a serviceable boxer. Nothing really stands out with you, and in that sense. But nothing jumps off the page of how good he is. But I like his stepping knees. I like his leg kicks. He's a very good high kick. You mentioned he's a good wrestler. He's a weak defensive wrestler. But if he gets on top, he's a submission threat. He can be a little too aggressive, losing position, trying to secure a submission that sometimes isn't there. He also look for subs off his back. But he's incredibly hard to submit. I mean, he went against Ilia Topuria, and Topuria had some deep subs on him a bunch of times that he didn't tap. He's got good cardio, too. I mean, he came on late against even Topuria, and he had a good run against DeMar Blackshear, who were both really good fighters. Say what we want about Zalal. I do agree with you. I think he's better than he's shown in the UFC. The problem is he's fought nothing but killers. I mean, Ilia Topuria. He's fought DeMar Blackshear. He's fought. Did he fight Sean Woodson? I feel like I'm forgetting somebody else. That was really. I'm pulling up his record real quick. Sorry. Sung Woo Choi. Okay. No, not kill. Sorry. All right. 3 kills and 1. Okay. Okay, fighter. But it continues here. I mean, he's fighting Billy Quarantillo, which is another big step up in competition. Zalal, I think, is a more technical striker. He's the better athlete. But I'm with Quarantillo. He's just going to do what he does. No matter how outmatched he is in the skills, I mean, unless it's something ridiculous like gets him Erosa, he's just going to go 1,000 miles an hour for 15 minutes. I think he gets takedowns over and over again. I think he gets superior positions. I think he has moments where he's looking for subs or backpacking, and he just does this for the majority of the fight, and he wins a unanimous decision.
Next up at UFC Vegas 89 is a clash of young bantamweight prospects as the undefeated Payton Talbott takes on Cameron Saaiman. Talbott, the 25-year-old Reno, Nevada native, is 7-0 as a professional. He is 1-0 in the UFC since joining out of Dana White's Contender Series last August. He fought in November at UFC Fight Night, Allen versus Craig, where he choked out Nick Aguirre in the 3rd round. He will look to keep his record spotless at the expense of Saaiman, who will be looking to rebound from his first loss. 23-year-old South African is 9-1 overall. He's 3-1 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of the Contender Series. He won his first 3 fights in the UFC, and along with his teammate Dricus du Plessis, seemed to be rocketing towards stardom with a mix of big finishes and big personality. That was until he ran into Christian Rodriguez at UFC Fight Night Youssef versus Barboza last October. He suffered his first career loss by unanimous decision. The mitigating circumstance that Rodriguez had missed weight, take that for what it's worth, but he's looking to bounce back from that. He is a slight to moderate underdog. Talbott is -160, Cameron +130. Keith, I'm going to flip this to you, but what I'll say off the top is I'm a little surprised they made this matchup. It feels like cutting bait on Saaiman. All Saaiman did was lose a pretty competitive fight to a guy in Christian Rodriguez who, 1, is pretty good himself, 2, missed weight by like 3 or 4 pounds, and 3, has been on kind of a prospect killing tour. I mean, he just won again this last weekend up a weight class, or in his new weight class, against another good prospect. And yet they're already.
I heard that's real controversial. Yeah.
It was controversial, but I mean, he got his hand raised. And here, I'm not saying they're feeding him to Payton Talbott. I mean, he's still a very, very good fighter, but I'm kind of surprised. Like if Saaiman, had not lost that fight, I think there's no way they make this fight right now, but here it is. Tell me how you feel about this one. And are we looking at 2 future top 15 guys? We always say no when you ask about bantamweight.
Sure. I think the potential is there for these 2 guys. A lot of times sometimes we say no, the division's so stacked. Sometimes we just say no, of course not. But these guys have that potential. The other thing that's weird about this matchup, no, it's going to be fun. Stylistically, it's a really fun matchup. So, but also, like Talbot, you're talking about a huge step up in competition. Like you're also taking a huge risk in a guy that you're got a lot of buzz and someone that you're high on. I mean, Talbot's only 25, so I love that. I mean, the guy's a great athlete, solid striker, insane output. I mean, he goes even harder than Billy Quarantillo does. I mean, one of the most insane output I've ever seen. I mean, his cardio is like full sprint for 15 minutes, nonstop moving forward. Besides his out, it's just mentally strong. Like he's strong enough to mentally break his opponents. He throws huge when he gets close. He throws huge combinations. He's accurate. He has serious power. He's got 5 knockout wins. The issue is how long can this sustain in the UFC because he has no defense. Doesn't move his head. Willing to eat punch, to land combination of his own. He's heavy on his front foot, so he's open to calf kicks. He's a weak defensive wrestler. To his credit, he does a good job to get back up. But he doesn't look for takedown himself. He's so aggressive. He walks himself into takedowns. Simon's only 23. So, if you think of Talbot as a prospect, I mean, Simon's even younger. So, if the UFC gave up on him, that's a really bad. I mean, he was in a tough situation to begin with. He's a southpaw that likes to fight a bull stances, good output. He's a kickboxer that likes to stand right in front of his foe and batter him. Now, this is playing with fire because he makes himself a big target. He doesn't set up his shots with feints. He kind of just throws. He's got fast hands. He also attacks with combinations. I love his straight left. He's got a great check right hook from the southpaw stance. He has a lot of variety in striking. The problem is he lacks power. He's not a big cracker. He's got a good kicking game. He likes spinning back kicks, very like Alexander Shlemenko style. Underrated wrestler, good at winning scrambles. He's a weak defensive wrestler. But he is hard to hold down. He showed against Terrence Mitchell that if he's on top, he's got mean ground and pound. He has a great guillotine and really good cardio. Yeah, this is weird matchmaking that, not the matchup you think, either giving up on one prospect or giving too much of a test for the other. But I like both guys, man. Like you asked if there could be top 15 fighters. Yeah, I think so. This could be a matchup where we get like, wow, these guys fought each other early in their careers. Saaiman is the more polished fighter, but Talbot is kind of like the ultimate outlier because he can fight at a pace never seen before, even though he's so raw. I think we have a war on our hands. I think Saaiman does enough to get a lead with his technical striking. I think he might add in a takedown or two. He's going to have to hold on to a late surge because Talbot's going to keep coming. And I think he's going to have a lot of success late. God, this is fun fight. I flip-flopped a lot because I still believe in Saaiman. And you know what? I'm going to go that way because he's more technical. I'm going to say he pulls an upset. But this is going to be one of those, like, by this, I always say this is how I root for my picks. You've heard it a million times, but in case it's the first time. Listen, I really root for my picks until I lose one. And then when I lose one, I'm like, I don't really care. Like, I don't care if I go 10-2. I don't care if I go 9-4, like whatever. If I go 13-0, 14-0, then I feel like, wow, I'm pretty good at this. But that's not going to happen. So this is going to be the one. I'm just going to sit down, put my feet up, and go, man, it's going to be fun to talk about on the recap show. And this is, so that's how I'm looking at this one. Give me Saaiman by split decision.
Yeah, I like everything there. The UFC, I think, is realizing that it might have something in both of these guys. Like clearly, it knows it might have something in Saaiman because he is willing to ride along with Dricus du Plessis. He's like a little bit of an outrageous type talker. His fights have been unrelentingly fun, but same with Talbot. Like Talbot's fight style is nothing like Sean O'Malley's, but he's kind of mix of confidence, looks. I mean, he's some streaks in his hair away from like being that kind of prospect in terms of incipient star power. I said I was surprised when they made this matchup. I feel gratified that you're leaning towards the upset because I am too. There's a lot to like about Talbott right now. Right now, he's 7-0 with 6 finishes. But the thing I like about it is there are no 15-second knockouts in there. Like, all of his finishes have come at least through the midpoint of the fight. He's shown that he can throw this insane volume and stick with it. That's a scary thing because you're always more worried about the person who comes to the UFC 6-0 or 7-0 and has never been past the 3-minute mark of a fight. But here, I think Saaiman is physically stronger. I think they're comparable athletes, but I think Saaiman is physically stronger. I think he's a better wrestler, and I think he's definitely a more willing wrestler. And I think that's what this is kind of going to pivot on. Saaiman, for as cocky as he is, and I'm sure during fight week he's going to say things like, I can knock Talbott out anytime I want. You know, Forrest couldn't bust a grape, as Rampage once said. But somewhere in his mind, he's like, I got to come back from my first loss. And he's going to be willing to turn to the wrestling if it comes to it. I'm saying he does so. He wins 2 rounds out of 3 here. And at least one of them is because he went to the safety valve, took Talbott down, you know, maybe stopped Talbott's momentum by doing so, or actually gets him in trouble on the ground. But give me Saaiman in a real fun fight here and in a mild upset. Third from the top at UFC Vegas 89 is a middleweight matchup between Edmen Shahbazyan and AJ Dobson. Shahbazyan, the 26-year-old Armenian-American fighting out of Southern California, now fighting out of Las Vegas. He made the move. He left Glendale Boxing Club, went to Extreme Couture, and I could not be happier for him. He's 12-4 overall.
Is he still managed by Ronda Rousey? Which is super weird because like he was being managed by Ronda Rousey, but I'm like, she wanted nothing to do with MMA. I'm like, is she taking calls from promoters? Like, what does it mean she's being managed by Ronda Rousey?
Or is it like professional wrestling manager, where it's not like his actual?
That'd be cooler. I mean, like if she came out like with Jimmy from the South, like talking into a microphone, or she jumps up on the apron and throws like salt in his opponent's eyes. That'd be cool. Yeah,
that'd be absolutely amazing. But I hope he has an actual manager. At any rate,
I just felt like if I'm trying to book an interview with Edmen Shahbazyan, I'm going to call Ronda Rousey.
Well, if Ronda Rousey picks up the phone, why do you want to talk to Edmen Shahbazyan? Yeah. Oh, that's not fair. All right. At any rate, he is 5-4 since joining the UFC out of season 2 of Dana White's Contender Series. It's been a back and forth story. He won his first 4 in the UFC, knocked out 3 of them in the first round. That got him, obviously, the cachet of being a Ronda Rousey protege. It also got him a little too much too soon, as he then lost 3 in a row to Derek Brunson, Jack Hermanson, and Nasruddin Imavov. In hindsight, 3 top 10 fighters at least. He regressed to the mean, came back with a win over Dalcha Lungiambula, but he did lose his last time out. Fought just once last year. It was at the Dern versus Hill fight night, where he got knocked out by Anthony Hernandez in the 3rd round. He had been scheduled to take on Duško Todorovic on Saturday. Todorovic was forced out, and in steps AJ Dobson. Dobson, 32-year-old Cleveland area native, is 7-2 with 1 no contest overall. He is 1-2 since joining the UFC out of season 5 of the Contender Series. He lost his first 2 in the UFC, dropping decisions to Jacob Malkoun and Armen Petrosyan before turning it around in his lone appearance of 2023, where he won a unanimous decision over Tafon Nchukwi. So he steps in here on short notice, tries to make it 2 in a row. He is not favored to do so. Shahbazyan is -190, Dobson +160. So it's been hard to get a bead on Edmen Shahbazyan. We knew on some level that he wasn't just going to keep on knocking everybody out in 40 seconds on, his way to winning a middleweight title. Like, on some level, we all knew that, but I don't think we knew where the express was going to end, because he beat Darren Stewart, Charles Burr, Jack Marshman on the way in. Those are 3. There are 3 guys that are no longer in the UFC. Darren Stewart might be. But when he iced Brad Tavares in a way that up to that point, nobody had been doing to Brad Tavares. Then we turn around and said, okay, well, if Tavares is the gatekeeper to the top 10, as he's been forever, Shabazian at least belongs there. He was exposed. I mean, he had the same problem against Brunson, Hermansson, and Imavov. Less so Imavov, but against Brunson and Hermansson. And Brunson was absolutely a top 10 fighter and a relatively recent like factor in the title picture when they fought. He won the first round. I mean, he hurt Brunson. He outlanded him, but he got tired. Brunson, despite looking like he outweighed him by 20 pounds, started rolling downhill on him, and Shabazian, ended up losing bad. He is better than he was 4 or 5 years ago, but it still feels to me like he's a better version of the same fighter, because what he was during that fantastic run of knockouts was, well, I mean, despite the Armenian last name, despite coming from the judo camp, he was a really fast, athletic, aggressive striker with tons of power in his fists and his feet, who fought at an unsustainable pace. Like Brunson kind of showed. Well, if you can outlast the blitz, he's going to get tired, and he's going to get tired fast. You don't have to have great cardio at middleweight, but you have to have more than 3 minutes of cardio, and Shabazian didn't. He's still just a slightly refined version of that fighter. And for an Edmund Shabazian type fighter, Anthony Hernandez was about as bad a matchup as you can think of, because what does Hernandez do? He loses to more skilled or more athletic fighters until he wins. He beat Shabazian that way. He beat Rodolfo Vieira that way. I still don't believe in Shabazian. I think he would have been in trouble against Todorovic. I mean, it would have been either, okay, he catches Todorovic cold and knocks him out in 2 minutes, or, Todorovic knocks him out late. Here against Dobson, I like this better. If you have any investment in Shabazian as, well, hey, he's just 26, he could still be a factor in this division, you like the Dobson fight better, because he has a better chance, I think, of hurting Dobson early and either stopping him, though we haven't seen Dobson stopped, or at least building up the kind of lead that Dobson can't really come back from. Just, I can see this fight playing out. Shabazian stings him early, like just lances him with a head kick, or just catches him with one of those like surprisingly fast, crosses. Hurts Dobson. Dobson's on skates. Dobson survives and wins rounds 2 and 3. Like everything is telling me to pick that and pick just another upset on this card. I do it. And again, I don't know what the line would have been against Todorovic, but I would have favored Todorovic against him. Like, and Shabazian, for a guy who again is theoretically comes from a judo background, doesn't have great takedown defense, especially when he's tired. This is going to seem like a real silly pick if Shabazian blows Dobson out in 40 seconds. But even Dobson coming in on short notice, I trust third round Dobson better than Shabazian. Like, that's the point to which I am still not back on the Shabazian Express. Give me yet another upset on this card. Give me Dobson to beat Shabazian the way basically everybody else has. Weather the storm early, take over late. And the problem is, and again, this might change every month that he's at Extreme Couture, especially in his mid-20s. I am sure he's improving. But the problem with Shabazian is he doesn't get tired pretty. Like, I can't remember who Dev used this analogy for, but it's applicable to Shabazian. Shabazian's cardio is like an electric toothbrush. It's going and it's going and it's going, but as soon as the battery starts to go, it's gone in 15 seconds. Like, it's dead. Like, Shabazian has that electric toothbrush cardio where it's not like he can even hang on in a fight he was winning. Just the wheels all fall off. All of a sudden, his hands are at his waist. People are punching him up. Anyone, like a stiff breeze, can take him down. He just wilts. I don't think that's changed. Give me Dobson here. And you know what? Until Shabazian Give me Dobson by third round TKO, ground and pound.
There you go. Dude, this fight, first of all, I don't think it should be this high in the card. Shabazian, I mean, he's only 26, which is still absurd to me. You know, I said this off the air. He feels like a busted prospect that should be 33 or something, and they're like, oh my God, he's only 26. Yeah, this could be a time he could be entering the UFC, you know, instead of being already, you know, the story been written on him. He's a long and lengthy fighter who in fairness, he looked much more controlled in the Dolce fight. He has some technical skills. He can work behind a long job. He's pretty accurate. He's good at wrapping punches around his opponent's high guard. His check left hook is his best strike. He hits hard, and he's just now kind of entering his power years. I like that he targets the body. He has some mean body kicks against Dolce Lingbula, but he doesn't check leg kicks. He's a weak defensive wrestler. Go back to like the Brunson and the Hermanson fight. He struggled to get off the bottom. Again, those are two really good guys. Offensive wrestling, he can get a takedown here and there, but that definitely not his go-to. You mentioned his card. The card has been beyond his Achilles heel. I mean, gassed out against Brunson, gassed out against Darren Stewart in a fight that people forget about, that he was trying to hold on to a win against a guy that he was overmatched. Then obviously Hermanson and Anthony Hernandez. You said that he's lost to nothing but 10 top 10 fighters before he got a win against Soldier. Anthony Hernandez is right there too now. So
and specifically a terrible matchup for Shabazian.
Terrible. That was an easy pick. Dobson, he's a wrestle boxer who's been adding a lot more like Muay Thai striking to his game. He usually has good output, but he was very gun shy against Armin Petrosian. To his defense, Petrosian is such a good striker that he can do that to people. Dobson can be wild. He throws hard shots. He loves his overhand right. I've said before, it's kind of like a Chuck Liddell baseball style throwing it. He has been rocked because of that aggressive style. He keeps his chin high in the air, open to be blasted. He has pretty good vision to block shots coming at him. I'll give him that. He doesn't like being pressured. He was breaking against Jacob Malkoun. Jacob Malkoun does it to a lot of people. He's good in the clinch. I'd say he's above average wrestler. He was catching kicks from Nchukwu to get the fight to the ground in their fight, but he completely abandoned the wrestling against Petrosian, which made no sense at all. He has a few subs on his record. I hate this fight, and I really feel that way because I don't have a read on either guy. I don't know if it's we have 13 fights and I ran out of tape study and I should have dug into these more. Maybe I'm being lazy, but I'm going to go with Shabazian because he's younger. If anybody can make improvement, it's going to be him. I love that he changed camps. I'm not one of these guys totally against Edmonds already and anything like that, but just you're going to one of the best camps and one of the best coaches.
And you're close to the UFC PI, which for a guy with cardio problems.
That's a very good point. Very, very good point. You know what? Like, I want to take like Shabazian by split decision just because that'd be funny now. He wins but with the late surge. But you know what? I'll say he lands a big shot. I'll say he gets it done early. But I really have no clue on this fight because I don't have I feel like out of the entire card, this is the one I'm least confident in my picks. And there's a lot of hard picks in this card. So I'm not a lot of confident. I'm definitely not a gambler. Don't follow my pick because I took Shabazian by knockout. Don't parlay anything. But yeah, I'll give Shabazian by knockout first round.
That brings us to the co-main event of UFC on ESPN 53, a heavyweight matchup between Carl Williams and Justin Tafa. Williams, the 34-year-old fighting out of Atlanta, is 9-1 overall. He's 2-0 since joining the UFC out of season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series. He fought twice last year, taking unanimous decisions over Lucas Dresky in March and Chase Sherman in May. He returns after just about 10 months off. And this is something that normally only happens in bad martial arts movies from the 80s or 90s, but he will be fighting not Junior Tafa, but his brother Justin, because Junior Tafa stepped in for Justin a couple weeks ago against Marcos Rogerio de Lima. This fight was already booked for Junior, so the brothers just switch. Again, it's weird. It's wonderful. It's fun. It wasn't fun for Junior Tafa, who lost to Marcos Pizao. Justin will hope for better results here. Justin Tafa, the older of the two brothers, 30-year-old Australian, is 7-3 with 1 no contest overall. He is 4-3 with 1 no contest in the UFC. He's on a 4-fight unbeaten streak. He fought 3 times last year. In February, he knocked out Parker Porter in just a minute. He fought Austin Lane twice and had to. Their first fight ended in like 30 seconds with an accidental eye poke. That was in June. They ran it back in September, and Tafa used his whole fist this time to put him down in 1 minute and 22 seconds. So Tafa, all of a sudden, got a little momentum. Again, he had been scheduled to take on Marcos Rogerio de Lima a few weeks ago. Here he steps in against Williams, and he is the underdog. Williams is minus 180, Tafa plus 140 on the comeback. Keith, this is your co-main event, and Justin Tafa. Well, here's the thing. For me, Justin Tafa, he's done better than I expected. He's always younger than I expect. There's something about him that just looks 37 years old. He just barely turned 30. He is a young guy. And I mean, he's kind of tied to Ivasa's
carded. Still getting carded at the bars.
He's kind of tied to Ivasa's body double. I mean, they have that same kind of squat Polynesian build. They even have the same kind of like, Maori, or I think it is, Maori style tattoos. And they've had kind of a similar track in the UFC. They were mediocre, one-dimensional sluggers early on, and now they've become good one-dimensional sluggers. Like it's not like Tai Tuivasa all of a sudden is throwing gogo platas on people. Just he's gotten better condition and he's gotten better at what he does. I think the same is the case for Tafa, because Tafa still has yet to face an opponent that's above just the very lowest level in the UFC. Like his losses, Yorgan De Castro, Carlos Felipe, and Jared Vandeira, that's not good. But then his wins, Juan Adams is gone. Harry Hunsucker, I think, is gone. Parker Porter's probably gone. Austin Lane's going to be gone as soon as this tough contract runs out. Like everyone Tafa's fought has been like one of the worst 5 or 6 heavyweights in the UFC. Against that level of fighter.
Yeah, Austin Lane's the best guy he's faced.
Yeah, there you go. Austin Lane's probably the best guy he's faced. Yeah, or Parker Porter. And against that level of fighter, Tafa is numbingly effective. He again got the same Tuivasa thing where he looks kind of like a short, fat guy. I mean, Tafa is one of the very few people to miss the heavyweight limit in the UFC. But surprisingly nimble under that. We don't know much about his cardio because he hasn't gone the distance in almost 3 years. I mean, he's been knocking everybody out in like 1.5 minutes. But for that 1.5 minutes, it's not like he just freaks out and spazzes out. He just puts a little pressure on him, and he seizes the opportunities when they come. He'll use a feint, or he'll be like a pitcher that will throw a 70% fastball to set you up for his 100% fastball. And against the lowest lights of the UFC heavyweight division, it's been enough. The problem is Carl Williams, I underestimated him early on, but even early on, I never thought he was on like the, Harry Hunsucker, Yorgan De Castro level. I just questioned whether heavyweight was really the place for him. Heavyweight's the place for him. I mean, he's fought back and forth at light heavyweight and heavyweight, but if he's a not that fat 245 pounds in the cage, then why ever go back down? And Williams is a good boxer. It's heavyweight. Tafa could always just catch him with a crushing overhand or just a body shot that would fold anybody. But the longer this fight goes, I think it probably favors Williams as someone who's demonstrably able to throw at a decent pace for 15 minutes. And as someone who, again, I just think is a niftier boxer and is probably going to figure out Tafa's tricks and start to tee off on him more and more. So there's always a chance that Tafa, puts him out in a minute. I'm not picking it. And because I think, Williams is going to maintain the pace and maybe even turn it up as we go along, I could see him finishing like a tiring Tafa, beat up Tafa in the, second or third round. I'm not going to pick it. I'm going to go with Williams by decision here. But outside of maybe going through some moments of peril in the first round, I think Williams will actually kind of make Tafa look basic on the feet.
Yeah, this is interesting. You know what I would love that they switch opponents, the Tafa brothers, if they were like completely different style fighters, even though they're very similar. But if they were like, one was a wrestler and the other one was like a kickboxer, and then they just
Well, I was just gonna say their faces are absolutely identical, but their styles. I think Junior's a little more of a diverse striker, and he's definitely taller.
Yeah, but I meant like extreme. Like they're both strikers on the feet. Like they want to throw down.
Yeah, like it'd be funny.
But it'd be pretty funny if they were completely different, and then they kind of use that advantage. Like they knew Junior was fighting the whole time, and Justin's like just pretending, and then Junior just jumps in with his opponent not ready, and they kind of like back in the old pro wrestling days. Remember the old Killer Bees with a mask, and like one of them would get knocked out, the other one would jump in, and because they were unmasked, the referee could never tell who that he didn't tag or anything like that.
Except that like their bodies are different enough that it would be just like screaming.
That was a little fatter. Yeah.
Here's an old school wrestling reference for you. I don't know if you remember the Machines, like when they had the tag team, the Machines, but it was Super Machine and Giant Machine, and they wore masks and they pretended like they were mysterious and nobody knew who they were. But it was Andre the Giant and Jimmy Snuka. So it was the most screamingly obvious because one of them is fucking Andre the Giant and the other one is Snuka, like this 5'6" muscular Samoan guy with hair, like curly hair coming out the back of his mask, and they tried to pretend like nobody knew who they were. Like it would be not quite that bad, but
I don't. I remember both those guys. I don't remember them as tag team partners.
The gimmick lasted like 2 months, and it was like 2 months out of the 18 months of my life that I watched a lot of wrestling.
Yeah,
so that stuck.
It was like when Hulk Hogan was also, I forget what he was called, but he was like the Ultimate Patriot. It was clearly Hulk Hogan with a like USA mask, and I don't know what the hell the WF was thinking. I forget what the gimmick was. Like I think it was supposed to be like we knew it was Hulk Hogan. But like
was regular Hogan not patriotic enough?
Yeah, it was. I forget what it was. Like everyone knew, so like even the commentator would be like, "It's Hulk Hogan," but I don't know why he was wearing it. I don't remember.
Okay. Here's a question because this fight sucks. Here's another question for you.
Sure.
Now you got me thinking about it. Siblings who have fought in MMA and have been at least somewhat high level. Who are the ones with the most different style? Because I mean, Nick and Nate Diaz are fairly similar.
Like that. Yeah. I had to think. Well,
I think Jim and Dan Miller's probably it. They had such different body types.
I'm trying to remember what Dan Miller did. If I'm not that trying to be
everybody. He was a long, lanky middleweight who guillotined everybody.
Okay. I mean, maybe Fedor and Alexander, because Fedor was so explosive. Alexander wasn't.
And their bodies were so different, it forced a different style. Alexander's huge. Yeah.
Huge, big, burly kind of lumbering guy. I mean, he was actually a better athlete than he looked. But I mean, Fedor, same thing. Fedor was a way better athlete than he looked. Mm-hmm. So maybe those guys. I'm sure there's probably like someone could post and be like a really obvious choice.
Because like Valentina Shevchenko is just a much, much better version of.
No, I think that's the call because of Valentina's offensive wrestling threat that Antonia does not have. So they both can be really dynamic strikers on the feet, but yeah, I think that's just because of how underrated and good of a wrestler Valentina is.
Mm-hmm.
That might be the call right there. I'm sure.
If you're listening to this, throw some in the comments. We're probably forgetting some major ones, but we're throwing out Fedor and Alex Emelianenko, Jim and Dan Miller, the Shevchenko sisters, siblings who fought very, very differently from each other.
Yeah, there's probably like some like guy who wrestled all the time. The other one's slugging it on the feet. There's probably like an obvious choice. Back to this fight. I mean, you mentioned Tafa being like how big he is. He's a boxer, fairly quick hands. He loves like lead uppercuts. He's got huge power. I mean, his step back counter knockout was beautiful. He landed an incredible high kick knockout against Harry Hunsucker. He has a lot of defensive flaws. He doesn't move his head. He kind of just ducks behind his forearms. He can be too aggressive, leaving open encounters. I mean, that's what happened against Jorgen De Castro, a loss that did not age well. He hasn't shown any ground game yet. I mean, he doesn't look for takedowns. To his credit, against Hunsucker, he did sprawl and spin behind and land some shots on top.
Kentucky Judo Federation takes an L.
Yeah, there you go. Carl Williams, he's a good athlete. He's explosive. He moves well. He's got quick hands, works behind a jab, follows up with straight crosses, underrated power, despite not being the biggest heavyweight. I mean, he's like 240, but he was smaller than that when he first joined. He was like 230 or something.
He fought at light heavyweight like 2 fights before he was on Dana White's Contender Series. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just talking specifically when he moved up to heavyweight. He's got good teep kicks, good calf kicks. He is open to calf kicks, so he doesn't check them. He's a good wrestler. And he's an explode through your hips kind of guy. I always go back when he out wrestled Jimmy Lawson, a former Penn State University wrestler, on like a Contender Series. He will shoot without any setups, but he can get inside, get a body lock takedown, good ground and pound. The one thing that concerns me with this fight is how surprisingly he gassed against Chase Sherman, because that was one thing that was on his side, was his ability to go hard, and then he really slowed against Chase Sherman. That would be an outlier than anything. Tough is a tough out because he can land a single shot and he can just graze you and put it out. But you're saying Williams piece him on the feet. I think he could do that, but I don't think he even takes a chance. I think he closes distance immediately. I think he doesn't let Tafa breathe. I think he wrestles. Now I'd be worried about him dropping down the hips and like eating some like downward elbows or anything with Tafa. But I think that's about it. I think he turns as a wrestling match and just cruises and gets a late stoppage after when Tafa's completely gassed. Maybe land some ground and pound. Give me Williams by third round TKO.
All right. With that, we come to the main event of UFC on ESPN 53. A women's flyweight clash between a former strawweight contender and a former 2-time strawweight champ. It is Amanda Ribas versus Rose Namajunas. Ribas, the 30-year-old Brazilian, is 12-4 overall. 7-3 in the UFC, 1-2 at flyweight. She had significant success at 115 pounds, then had a run at 125, basically, a year and a half ago, where she dropped fights to Caitlin now Sermonara and Macy Barber, wrapped around a win over Viviane Araújo. She did go back down to 115 for her last fight, knocked out Luana Pinheiro, a late candidate for knockout of the year last November at UFC Fight Night. Allen versus Craig just hit her with a spinning wheel kick that froze her and then finished it on the ground. She is back up at 125 for this, her first headlining appearance in the UFC. She'll be taking on somebody that is no stranger to headlining fights in the form of Namajunas. 31-year-old Wisconsin native fighting out of Colorado, is 11-6 overall. She is 9-5 in the UFC. Obviously, the majority of her run took place at strawweight, where she is in the running for the greatest of all time and was a 2-time champion, but she fought most recently at flyweight after her kind of mystifying title loss to Carla Esparza a little under 2 years ago. She took a year and a half off almost, came back last September and took on Manon Fior in Paris, up a weight class, and acquitted herself fairly well in a unanimous decision loss. She is sticking around in the 125 pounds, at least for the time being, and she is a strong favorite here. She is Namajunas minus 270, Ribas plus 220. If I remember correctly, that's the biggest favorite on the entire card. Wow. Keith, this is a weird one, man, because on one hand, you and I both love Amanda Ribas. Like, We like her fight style. It's impossible not to love her personality. Like, if you don't love Amanda Ribas, something's wrong with you. But at her best, Rose Namajunas is better at literally everything. Like, at her best, Rose Namajunas is a better striker with more power, better grappler.
I bet you Ribas is like better at like whistling.
Okay, whistling. That's how she gets the birds to come like land in the trees.
Maybe like yo-yo. She maybe like I think she could do a good yo-yo. Yeah. But definitely blowing bubbles.
Yeah. Especially at 125 pounds, Ribas might have just more brute physical strength. I think she's a little bigger framed than Namajunas, but Namajunas has yet to lose a fight because she was the physically weaker fighter. Like, she's lost. Well, you can make the argument against Andrade, but
she slammed on her head. Yeah. But then she avenged it.
Yep. She got slammed on her head, but even there, it took Andrade like numerous tries. Here's the thing. It's tough to take Namajunas as an almost 3-1 favorite over anybody, especially anybody as good and reliable as Ribas, just because the Esparza fight was just 2 fights ago, and she looked so disinterested, and lost to a less skilled fighter in one of the worst title fights of all time. Just openly talked about how her heart wasn't in it anymore, walked away for over a year, time during which, would you have been surprised if she never came back?
Yeah, no.
I wouldn't have been that surprised. And then she comes back in what ended up being a title eliminator against Manon Fior, and she lost, but she was there for it. I think she lost because Fior was, if not better, bigger and good enough, to overcome that difference.
She broke her
hand. And like her finger, like it looks like she might have been compromised by an injured finger.
Yeah,
that's and even there, I mean, she did some things that hadn't really been done to Manon Fior. Fior kind of trucked everybody, and Namajunas showed
it was closer than people remember.
Yes, it was, because it was a 30-27 Fior. I scored at 30-27,
and that's the right score, but it was closer rounds than people remember.
I completely agree. And round 3 was the closest round. Like, I ended up thinking I would like to have seen 2 more rounds of this, because Namajunas, despite the early injury, was kind of starting to gain momentum, and she showed that Fior doesn't like striking off the back foot. So yeah, again, we're not a betting show. I'm not a betting man, but I'm not touching Rose Namajunas as a huge favorite, because which one do we get? How engaged is she in the fight? If Namajunas is in shape, I hate the word motivated, but you know what I mean. If Thug Rose is there, I do think she handles Ribas. Like, Ribas is a good striker. Namajunas is a sublime striker at her best. I mean, we're talking about someone with, despite the fact that Namajunas like looks kind of thin and willowy, like she looks more like a dancer than a fighter, has some of the best power in the division. Like, she doesn't look like Jessica Andrade, but the way she just destroyed Weili Zhang with just that head kick with like no telegraphing, the way she just crushed Joanna Jędrzejczyk, where nobody else had even really hurt Jędrzejczyk on the feet, and Namajunas caught her with like 3 clean punches, and the thing was over. And that's all stuff that's developed later. That's stuff that she developed really after she went to Trevor Whitman. Her calling card early on was that she was an incredible grappler. Yeah. She hit my radar because she hit somebody with a flying arm bar in like 10 seconds in her second or third fight when she was, I think, like 22 years old. Like, she has all of the skills. And again, like, she's great, like at an all-time level for the division, where Ribas is good everywhere. But what I know about Ribas is, like, despite like the sweet cutesy persona, like, she's a tough, grimy fighter when she needs to be. Like she's not cute at the end of a lot of her fights, but she's won some fights just with grit, determination. So if Namajunas isn't entirely there mentally, she could be ahead early and lose late. 5 rounds is a long time to be there if you don't want to be there. I still believe in Namajunas to the point that I think she's going to show up to win this fight. And if she does, again, I think she has the advantages over Ribas just about everywhere. Honestly, Ribas's best spots for offense in this fight would be forcing the clinch, doing some dirty boxing inside. Ribas is also surprisingly, well, I shouldn't say surprisingly good. Her dad's like a former Brazilian judo champ, but good at getting takedowns from there. Good at muting her opponent's offense from in there. If she can get a lot of those kind of situations and not let Namajunas do the high flying highlight reel thing, she could definitely win rounds that way. But Namajunas tends to be good at avoiding those situations. So this is me saying, I think we get the good Namajunas, and I don't know if that fighter is a future champ or a future title contender at 125, but I do think she's good enough to get past Ribas. So give me Namajunas in a pretty dominant decision here, where she probably wins like 4 rounds out of 5, and Ribas is pretty marked up afterwards, and Namajunas wins in convincing enough fashion that even with the loss to Fior, the booth and some of the fans are talking about her potential against the top 5 fighters in the division and whether she can be a factor in the title picture.
Yeah, we would have to talk about that. Either way, depending on the wins, because there's not too many other storylines going on the recap show. So be ready for that talk. I'm going to give Namajunas a pass on the Manon Farrow fight, just because, one, moving up in weight, taking on an absolute savage, and then fighting the majority of the fight with one hand. It's hard to really take. Rose Namajunas is such a great athlete. She moves well. She's got great footwork. The problem is she sometimes does it too much. She did that in that terrible fight against Carlos Esparza. She seems so focused on cutting angles and avoiding strikes than landing. Now she has the rare ability to land strikes while backing up. Maybe she was trying to get Carlos Esparza to chase her and land. I don't know. She doesn't have many tells in her striking. She has very fast hands. She likes to work from distance, though I am a little concerned moving up to 125. I mean, I'm acting like this is her first fight, 125, just because I'm giving her a pass on the Manafro fight. The concern is being that she's going to be undersized. Does that she have less? How much does that decrease moving up to 125? She's got one of the best jabs in the game. I love that you mentioned her power. She's an underrated power. You said that she's got, one of the best power. God.
Well, it's Anderson Silva power, because you look at the body and you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah,
but it's just
exactly.
Clean technique.
Sean O'Malley.
Yeah, good example.
Whereas skinny, and I mean, look at Sean O'Malley.
Sean O'Malley's got the Tommy Hearns power. Yeah,
like Sean O'Malley, looks like he can't bench press the bar. So you mentioned about her power. I think it's going to be even better at 125. You said something, and I just want to make sure that the listener don't misunderstand what you said. You said that she has some of the best power in the division. Obviously, you're talking about her power at 125 because we haven't seen it yet at I'm saying 115. Yeah, we haven't seen it yet at 125. So I know some people like to nitpick. She's got a great kicking game. I mean, legendary high kick. She's very intelligent too, in the sense like she understands winning rounds. I always go back to this, but it's aging it. But when she snuck in the takedown in the 5th round in this rematch against Joanna and Jacek, when I thought it was 2 rounds each. I think it was about 1 minute left. I think I had about 2 minutes each in the 5th round. Like, it was as close as it comes. And to change up a fight that has been primarily striking with such an intelligence, so many people wouldn't have done that. And she's always been able to take people down. She's a super slick grappler, you mentioned, very flexible, good at winning scramble. She advanced position on the ground. And then she has the experience. She has the experience to go, she's been in so many championship fights. She's been in 5-round fights. Hebus is also a really good athlete. She also moves well. She kind of flows the way she fights. Good volume, technically sound from distance, can fight out of both stances, fast, accurate, good variety of strikes. Lands to all parts of the body, mixes punches and kicks together in combinations really well. Good overall kicking game. Loves spinning attacks. The problem is her defense. She doesn't move her head. She doesn't laterally move defensively. She attacks. It's so funny because she cuts angles offensively, but she doesn't like avoid strikes. She'll stay in the pocket. She won't sidestep, stuff like that. She can get in the clinch and grind. She's got a judo background, so she loves upper body throws but she'll go for like crazy headlocks. She loves that head on throw, which I hate. And Namajunas is very scrambly, and she's a follow hips kind of person. So I could see her getting thrown, but then also like getting thrown to headlock and then using that moments later to sneak and take the back. She's got good top control. She looks to pass on the ground. Her grappling is really good. Like I said in the past, she's out grappled Mackenzie Dern at times. She's a submission threat. She has 4 subs on her record. You got to worry about her durability, though. She's been knocked out by Macy Barber. She was knocked out by Marina Rodriguez. So I like both fighters. It is hard to gauge Rose Namajunas' motivation. You mentioned it. She's talking about retirement. She's talking about not being motivated. I thought due to the losing streak that she actually was going to come in as the underdog. And I thought this was going to be like, oh, he's picked a couple underdogs. And then I come up with this bold pick by taking Namajunas. But yeah, I'm with. So apparently, I'm with Vegas. I think Rose is better than Hebus everywhere. I don't trust Hebus' defense. I don't trust her chin. I think Rose can crack when she commits to something. I think Rose catches her early. I say Namajunas does in the very first round. I think it's going to be this big bounce back moment for Rose Namajunas. Give me Rose Namajunas by first round knockout.
All right. That is it. The Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 53, Hebus versus Namajunas, also known as UFC Vegas 89. I have been Ben. He's been Keith. If this is your first time watching or listening to one of our previews, first of all, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We do our best to bring as good a mix of actual in-depth analysis and occasional historical or humorous asides as you'll find anywhere in this industry. Please do give us a like. It costs you nothing. It makes us feel good. Give us a follow, subscribe if you're so inclined. We preview every UFC card and occasionally other offerings. Drop us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We would love to hear your take on these fights. I picked a lot of upsets, so if you think I'm out of my gourd, let me know, because if you're right, I will give you all the credit afterwards. Speaking of afterwards, join us for the recap.
Sorry to interrupt you. I know you're going to talk about the recap. You're just talking about all the listeners and also I want to thank all the listeners for what they do. They're the absolute best. But the other people that also help her out is our families, and I want to give a special shout out to a woman who's standing right here. It is her birthday. I want to say it just turned 12 o'clock here, so it's officially her birthday. And she's about to go to bed, but I gave her the stop sign. So I want to wish my wife right here for all the listeners. All you guys put in the comments, say happy birthday to my wife.
29 again, huh?
29 again. So she's the most. She's the most beautiful woman in the world. No, I'll cost you a woman too. But our women allow us to do this stuff. And she goes downstairs in the basement when I'm recording, so she doesn't make noise. She does all these things. She never gives me a hard time. So she's very special. So happy birthday to the love of my life right there.
Awesome. She will not be joining us on the recap because it's very late. You should join it. We'll be live on the Sherdog YouTube page about right after the main event. Keith takes the captain's chair. We'll talk about all 13 of these fights in reverse order, from the headliner all the way down to that very first prelim, talking about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. Talking about what's next for some of the notable winners as well as losers, and talking to you. The live chat is open that whole time, so we're taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends who hang out with us after the fights, and we would love for you to be part of it. Between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy these fights.
To the sea. Don't count